Hello and welcome for today's cryptid horror stories. In the comments, where are you from and what kind of cryptids do you like? Now for the stories. The Goatman. My name is Dr. Adrian Cross, and I am the sole surviving senior researcher of the 2019 Chesapeake Cryptid Expedition. Of the 12 men and women who entered the Blackwood Forest on the morning of October 15th, only 2 emerged alive 3 days later. I am writing this account from my hospital bed, my left arm amputated at the elbow, my face reconstructed from the damage done by those terrible teeth, my mind haunted by memories that will never fade. The authorities have asked me to provide a detailed statement of what occurred. They want to understand how 11 people died in such horrific ways. They want to know if the Goatman is real, if it can be found, if it can be stopped. I will tell them the truth, all of it, even the parts they won't believe. I am a professor of cryptozoology at Johns Hopkins University, which means I study creatures that may or may not exist. The Goatman has been part of Maryland folklore for 200 years, ever since the first European settlers reported encounters with a creature that walked like a man but had the head of a goat, complete with curling horns and yellow eyes. The legends described it as a guardian of the forest, a vengeful spirit that punished those who trespassed on its territory. It was said to live in the Blackwood Forest, an area of dense woodland and treacherous ravines that had remained largely unexplored since the 1800s. I had spent 15 years studying the Goatman legends, compiling accounts, analyzing patterns, building a case for an actual biological entity. The stories were remarkably consistent. A creature 7 to 8 feet tall, bipedal, covered in brown or black fur, with a goat's head and hooved feet. It was reportedly incredibly strong, capable of tearing men apart with its bare hands. It was said to be intelligent, sometimes speaking to its victims before killing them, always offering them a choice: leave the forest and live or stay and die. Most people chose to leave. Those who didn't were never seen again. In 2019, a local logging company received permission to clear a section of the Blackwood Forest, and their preliminary surveys had turned up something unusual: bones. Human bones, arranged in patterns, marked with symbols that matched descriptions from the old legends. The company contacted me, hoping I could identify what they had found and determine if it posed a threat to their workers. I assembled a team, 12 of us, all professionals, all experienced in field work. There was myself, the team lead, Dr. Sarah Chen, my research partner and closest friend, Mark Williams, a wildlife biologist, Jennifer Lopez, a forensic anthropologist, David Kim, our security specialist and former Marine, 6 graduate students, Tom, Lisa, James, Maria, Kevin, and Angela, and Robert Hayes, the logging company's representative. We entered the forest at dawn on October 15th, armed with cameras, recording equipment, GPS units, and enough firepower to stop a charging rhino. David had insisted on the weapons, citing safety protocols. I had agreed reluctantly, still believing we were dealing with an undiscovered primate or a bear with unusual characteristics. I didn't truly believe in the Goatman. Not then. The forest was beautiful in autumn, the leaves turning gold and crimson, the air crisp and clean. We followed old logging trails for the first few hours, making good time, documenting flora and fauna, collecting samples. It was routine field work, the kind I had done 100 times before. Then we found the first body. It was hanging from a tree, suspended by a rope tied around its ankles. The corpse was naked, its skin removed in strips, the flesh beneath exposed and rotting. The face was gone, the skull empty of eyes and tongue. But the worst part was the pose. The arms were arranged in a position of prayer, the hands pressed together, and around the neck hung a crude necklace made of small bones. Jennifer examined it, her face pale but professional. Human, male, probably in his 20s, been dead at least a week. The skinning was done post-mortem, thank God he didn't feel it. What kind of animal could do this? Mark asked, his voice shaking. No animal, Jennifer said quietly. This was done with tools, knives probably, and the posing. Animals don't pose their kills. This was deliberate, ritualistic. I looked up at the hanging corpse, at the way it swayed in the breeze, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. The legend spoke of the Goatman's trophies, of humans hung from trees as warnings to others. I had always assumed those were stories, exaggerations. I was beginning to realize my mistake. We should turn back, David said, his hand on his sidearm. This is crime scene territory now. We need to contact the authorities. We will, I said, though I didn't reach for my radio. Something held me back, a curiosity that was stronger than my fear. But let's document this first. Evidence. We need to understand what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a killer, Adrian, Sarah said quietly. Human or otherwise, something did this, something dangerous. I know, but we're here now. We have a job to do. We photographed the body, recorded our observations, and marked the location for the authorities. Then we continued deeper into the forest, following the trail of bones the loggers had reported. We found the second body an hour later. This one was on the ground, propped against a tree in a sitting position, the face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The chest had been torn open, the ribs spread like wings, the organs removed. The heart was missing. "Oh my God," Angela whispered, turning away to vomit. "Oh my God, oh my God." "Stay calm," David ordered, his weapon drawn, scanning the trees. "Everyone stay together, eyes open." "This wasn't done by any animal I know of," Jennifer said, her voice trembling. "The precision. The rib cage was cracked open from the inside, something with incredible strength. And the heart, it's been taken." "The legends," Robert said, his face pale. "The Goatman eats the hearts of its victims, takes their courage, their strength." "That's superstition," I said automatically, though I wasn't sure anymore. "Is it?" Sarah asked, pointing to the tree behind the body. Carved into the bark were symbols, crude but unmistakable. A goat's head surrounded by stars and moons above a row of tally marks. I counted them, 23. 23 marks. "It's counting," Lisa whispered. "It's counting its kills." "Or someone's counting for it," David said. "This could be a cult. Some backwoods group worshipping the legend, carrying out sacrifices." "Then where are they?" Tom asked. "We've been here for hours. We haven't seen anyone, heard anything." "They're watching," David said, "waiting." We moved on, faster now, abandoning our scientific detachment in favor of survival instincts. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees growing denser, the light dimmer, the air heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something musky and wild that made my skin crawl. We found the clearing at noon. It was a perfect circle of bare earth, surrounded by trees that leaned away as if recoiling from something unnatural. In the center stood a structure made of bone and wood and sinew, like a crude altar, and upon it lay the third body. This one was fresh. A man dressed in logger's gear, his chest still rising and falling with shallow breaths. His eyes were open, aware, and they fixed on us with desperate pleading. "Help me," he whispered, blood bubbling at his lips. "Please, help." David ran to him, kneeling beside the altar, checking his wounds. "He's been gutted, his intestines. Oh God, Sarah, I need your medical kit, now." Sarah ran forward, but before she reached the altar, the forest exploded with sound. A scream, inhuman and deafening, erupted from the trees, and something massive crashed through the underbrush, moving with impossible speed. I saw it for the first time, the Goatman. It was everything the legends described and worse. 8 feet tall, covered in coarse brown fur that stank of musk and decay. The head was goat-like but wrong, the proportions twisted, the eyes, those terrible yellow eyes, glowing with an intelligence that was far from human. The horns curled back from its skull, sharpened to points that gleamed like daggers. The arms were too long, ending in hands that had both fingers and hooves, capable of gripping and tearing. The legs were goat-like, bent backward at the knee, terminating in cloven hooves that sparked against the stone. It held a weapon, a staff made of wood and bone, topped with a human skull. The creature didn't hesitate. It charged straight at David, who had only time to turn before the staff caught him in the chest, the force of the blow lifting him off his feet and sending him flying 20 feet through the air. He hit a tree with a wet crunch and slid down, leaving a smear of blood on the bark, his body folded at an impossible angle, his spine shattered. "Run!" I screamed, though my feet felt rooted to the ground. "Everyone run!" The Goatman turned its attention to Sarah, who was frozen beside the altar, her medical kit spilled on the ground. It approached her slowly, almost casually, the way a predator approaches prey that has already accepted death. "Doctor," it said, and its voice was the worst sound I had ever heard. Not human, not animal, but something in between, like stones grinding together, like wind through a crypt. "You come to my forest. You bring your cameras, your guns, your curiosity." "Please," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, we didn't mean to intrude." "Intentions mean nothing," the Goatman replied. "Only actions. You trespass. You see what should not be seen. You know what should not be known." It raised its staff, the skull gleaming in the sunlight. "The forest demands payment. The old ways demand blood." "No," I screamed, finally finding my legs, running toward Sarah, toward the creature, toward certain death. "Leave her alone." The Goatman turned its head, those yellow eyes fixing on me, and smiled. It actually smiled, showing teeth like yellow needles. "You wish to save her, Doctor. You wish to be the hero. Very well. Watch. Learn the price of curiosity." It moved faster than I could track. One moment it was standing over Sarah, the next it had her by the throat, lifting her into the air with one hand while the other tore at her clothes, stripping her naked with brutal efficiency. She screamed, thrashing, and the creature slammed her against the altar, pinning her down with its massive body. "Sarah," I screamed, reaching them, grabbing at the creature's fur, trying to pull it away. The Goatman backhanded me casually, and I flew through the air, hitting the ground hard, my head ringing, my vision swimming. I tried to rise, tried to help, but my body wouldn't respond. I could only watch as the creature raped my friend. I will not describe it in detail. I cannot. The sounds alone were enough to drive me to the edge of madness, the wet slap of flesh, Sarah's screams turning to whimpers, turning to silence. The creature was not gentle. It took its time, savoring her fear, her pain, her humiliation. When it was finished, when Sarah lay broken and bleeding on the altar, it reached into her chest with one clawed hand and tore out her heart. It held the organ up to the sky, blood dripping down its arm, and let out a roar that shook the trees. "The first payment," it bellowed, "the first of many." The other members of our team had scattered when the creature appeared, running blindly into the forest. I saw Mark disappear into the trees, his face white with terror. I saw Jennifer stumble and fall, scrambling up and running in the wrong direction, toward the creature rather than away. I saw the graduate students scattering like frightened birds, their screams echoing through the forest. The Goatman didn't pursue them immediately. It turned back to Sarah's body, bent down, and began to feed. I heard the tearing of flesh, the cracking of bone, the wet sounds of consumption. I lay on the ground, unable to move, unable to look away, my mind fracturing under the weight of what I was witnessing. When it was done, when Sarah was reduced to scattered remains, the Goatman approached me. It stood over me, blood dripping from its muzzle, those yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "You live, Doctor," it said. "For now. You are the narrator, the witness. You will tell the story of what happens here. You will warn others." "Why?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it is my nature, because the forest is mine, because humans forget the old boundaries, the old agreements. Someone must remind them." It reached down and grabbed me by the arm, lifting me to my feet with casual strength. "You will watch, Doctor. You will see what happens to those who enter my domain. And when it is done, you will leave. You will carry the message. Tell them the Goatman is waiting. Tell them the forest remembers." It released me, and I fell to my knees, sobbing. The creature turned away, raising its bloody staff to the sky, and let out another roar. A summons. From the trees they came. More of them, dozens. I had thought the Goatman was a solitary creature, but I was wrong. They were a tribe, a clan, a society hidden in the depths of the forest. They surrounded the clearing, their yellow eyes gleaming, their goat heads bobbing, their hooves stamping against the earth. "The hunt begins," the leader shouted, and the others took up the cry, their voices blending into a chorus of horror that would haunt my dreams forever. "Bring me the trespassers. Bring them to the altar." The creatures scattered, moving into the forest with terrifying speed, and I was left alone with the dead. David, his spine shattered, his eyes staring at nothing. Sarah, what remained of her, scattered across the altar. The logger, who had finally stopped breathing, his pain ended. And the 3 bodies we had found earlier, hanging from trees, posed against bark, displayed as warnings. I don't know how long I knelt there, rocking back and forth, my mind blank with trauma. It might have been minutes. It might have been hours. Time lost meaning. When I finally looked up, the forest was silent again. The Goatman and his tribe had gone, but I could hear the distant sounds of pursuit, screams, crashes, the wet sounds of violence being done. I knew I should run, should try to escape while the creatures were distracted, but I couldn't move, couldn't think, could only sit and wait for death to find me. It was Angela who found me. She stumbled into the clearing, her clothes torn, her face covered in blood that wasn't hers. She had lost her glasses somewhere, and her eyes were wild with terror. "Dr. Cross," she gasped, falling to her knees beside me. "Dr. Cross, we have to run. They're killing everyone there. They're eating them." "I know," I said, my voice hollow. "We have to go now, while they're distracted." "Go where? They know this forest. We'll never make it out." "We have to try." She grabbed my arm, pulling at me. "Please, Dr. Cross, we can't stay here." She was right. Even if it was hopeless, we had to try. I let her help me up, and together we stumbled into the trees, moving as quietly as we could, heading in what I hoped was the direction of the trail. We hadn't gone 100 yards when we heard the screams. Tom's voice, high and terrified, rising in a shriek that cut off suddenly. Then Lisa, her voice saying "no, no, no" over and over until her words turned to gurgles and stopped. "They're hunting us," Angela whispered, clutching my arm. "They're hunting us one by one." "Keep moving," I said, trying to sound brave, failing utterly. We moved through the forest, avoiding clearings, staying in the shadows, trying to be silent. But the forest belonged to the Goatman. Every rustle of leaves, every snapped twig, every breath we took seemed to announce our presence. We found Mark's body an hour later. He had climbed a tree, trying to escape, and the Goatman had simply followed him up. The creature had torn him from the branches, and the ground below was painted with his blood. His chest was cracked open, his heart missing, his face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. "It took his heart," Angela said, her voice breaking. "Like Sarah, like the others." "It eats them," I said, the words tasting like ash. "It eats their hearts to gain their strength, their courage. The legends were right. We have to keep moving." But we didn't get far. As we turned to leave, a figure stepped from the trees, blocking our path. Not the leader. A smaller Goatman, younger perhaps, its horns only partially grown, its fur more gray than brown. But its eyes were the same yellow, and its teeth were just as sharp. "Run!" I screamed, pushing Angela backward. The creature moved with terrifying speed, catching Angela before she could flee, lifting her by her hair with one hand while the other raked across her back, tearing through her clothes and skin. She screamed, thrashing, and the creature threw her to the ground, pinning her beneath its weight. I did the only thing I could think of. I charged, screaming, my hands raised like claws, trying to distract the creature, to draw its attention away from Angela. It worked. The Goatman turned, amusement in its eyes, and caught me with a blow that sent me spinning. I hit a tree, my shoulder dislocating with a wet pop, and collapsed, agony washing over me in waves. The creature returned its attention to Angela, who was crawling away, leaving a trail of blood. It grabbed her ankle, dragging her back, and positioned itself over her. I knew what was coming. I had seen it before. "No," I screamed, trying to rise, trying to help, my useless arm hanging at my side. The Goatman ignored me. It tore at Angela's clothes, exposing her flesh, and I closed my eyes, unable to watch, unable to help, listening to her screams as the creature took her. When the sound stopped, when Angela's screams turned to whimpers and then silence, I opened my eyes. The creature was still there, crouched over her, but something had changed. It was looking at me, its head tilted in that disturbingly human gesture. "You tried to save her," it said, its voice higher than the leader's, younger. "Why?" "She's my student," I rasped, my throat raw. "My responsibility." Responsibility. The word seemed to puzzle the creature. It stood, leaving Angela's broken body on the ground, and approached me. "You are strange, human. Most run, most abandon their pack. You stayed, you fought." "I'm not brave," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm just stupid." The creature laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. "Perhaps, but you have heart." It reached down and grabbed my arm, the injured one, and I screamed as pain exploded through my shoulder. "I could take it, your heart, your courage, but I think I will let you keep it, for now." It released me and I collapsed, gasping. "Go, human, take your broken female, leave this forest. Tell your kind what you have seen. Tell them the Goatman is not legend. Tell them the price of trespass." I stared at it, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You're letting us go." "I am letting you live, for now. The forest is merciful to those who show courage, but do not return. Next time I will not be so generous." I crawled to Angela, checking her pulse. She was alive, barely, her breathing shallow, her body broken. I didn't know if she would survive, but I had to try. I dragged her through the forest, my dislocated arm screaming with every movement, my mind blank with shock and horror. The Goatman watched us go, standing motionless among the trees, and behind it I could see others watching too, dozens of yellow eyes gleaming in the shadows. They let us pass, they let us leave. I don't know how long it took to reach the trail, to find our vehicles, to drive to the nearest hospital. I remember only fragments. The sound of Angela moaning, the smell of blood, the feeling of the Goatman's eyes on my back, watching, waiting. The authorities found the bodies the next day. 11 corpses, all mutilated, all missing their hearts. The logging company shut down its operation. The forest was declared off-limits, a restricted area that no one could enter. But I know the truth. The Goatman is still there, still waiting, still hungry. And it let me go for a reason. Not mercy, not kindness. It wanted a witness, someone to tell the story, to spread the fear, to keep others away. I am that witness, I am the narrator. But I am also a warning. Because the Goatman told me something before I left, something that haunts me every night, every time I close my eyes. "Next time," it whispered, its breath hot against my ear, smelling of blood and decay. "Next time, doctor, you will not be the witness, you will be the sacrifice." I survived. Angela survived, though she will never walk again, never speak of what happened to her. But we are marked now. The Goatman knows our scent, our faces, our fears. Angela and I spent 6 months in recovery after the massacre in Blackwood Forest. She was in the ICU for 3 weeks, her body traumatized in ways that the doctors struggled to understand. The Goatman had been brutal but methodical, leaving her alive but broken. Her spine was damaged, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. Her reproductive system was destroyed. Her mind was the worst part. Angela didn't speak for 2 months. When she finally did, it was only to scream, to beg for death, to relive the horror in every waking moment. The psychiatrists diagnosed her with severe PTSD, but that clinical term didn't capture the reality. She was haunted, possessed by memories that played on an endless loop. I wasn't much better. My arm had been amputated below the elbow, the damage too severe to repair. My face required reconstructive surgery, the Goatman's claws having stripped away skin and muscle. I walked with a limp now, my left leg damaged from the fall. And my mind. I saw them every time I closed my eyes. The yellow eyes, the curved horns, the teeth. The government kept us isolated at first, debriefing us endlessly, trying to understand what we had encountered. They called it a bioanomaly, or undiscovered primate species, refusing to acknowledge the truth even when Angela and I described the creature's intelligence, their speech, their organized society. Mass hysteria, one official suggested, shared trauma creating false memories. 11 dead bodies, I replied, mutilated, posed, hearts removed. Is that mass hysteria? They had no answer for that. Eventually, they released us, warned us not to speak publicly, threatened us with prosecution under various national security statutes. We signed papers, made promises, accepted hush money that neither of us wanted. Then they left us alone. I moved to a small apartment in the city, far from any forests, surrounded by concrete and steel. I tried to resume my teaching, but every time I looked at my students, I saw their faces on the altar, their hearts in the Goatman's claws. I resigned after 1 semester, unable to face the questions, the pity, the disbelief. Angela moved in with her parents, her wheelchair a constant reminder of what the forest had taken from her. We spoke rarely, our shared trauma too heavy a burden to bear together. When we did meet, it was in silence, two broken people with nothing left to say. But the Goatman wasn't finished with us. It started 3 months after our release. I was asleep in my apartment when I heard it, a sound outside my window on the 4th floor where no sound should be, a scratching like claws on glass. I woke, my heart pounding, my hand reaching for the phantom limb that was no longer there. The scratching stopped, replaced by something worse, breathing. Heavy, wet breathing like something large was pressed against the glass. I didn't look, I couldn't look. I lay frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of breaking glass, the feel of claws on my throat. It didn't come. After an hour, the breathing stopped. The scratching didn't resume. I finally worked up the courage to look and saw nothing but empty night outside my window. But on the glass, written in something dark and wet, were 3 words. "Next time, doctor." I called the police, but they found nothing. No evidence of intrusion, no footprints, no explanation for the writing except my own delusion. "Dr. Cross," the responding officer said gently, "we know what you went through, the trauma. It's common for survivors to experience episodes." "I'm not hallucinating," I insisted. "It was here it found me." "The window is 4 stories up. There's no ledge, no fire escape. Nothing could have stood outside it. It's not human. It doesn't follow our rules." The officer exchanged glances with his partner. "We'll file a report, sir, but we can't investigate what isn't there." They left me alone with my fear, and I knew then that I was being hunted. The Goatman had marked me, claimed me, and it was only a matter of time before it came to collect. I called Angela the next day, my hands shaking. "It's not over," I told her. "It's coming for us." "I know," she said quietly. "I've seen them too in the trees outside my window, watching, waiting. We need to leave, get away somewhere it can't find us." "It will always find us, Adrian. It marked us. We belong to it now." "Then we fight. We find a way to kill it." Angela laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Kill it? It's not a bear, Adrian. It's not an animal. I don't know what it is, but it can't be killed, not by us." "Then what do we do?" We wait, we prepare, and when it comes, she paused, her voice dropping to a whisper, we make it regret letting us live. We spent the next 3 months preparing. I used my savings to buy weapons, shotguns, rifles, knives, anything that might hurt the creature. Angela used her technical expertise to build a security system around her parents' house, cameras and sensors and traps designed to detect anything approaching. We researched, too, dug into the folklore, the legends, the historical accounts. We learned that the Goatman had been seen in these woods for centuries, perhaps millennia. Native American tribes had stories of the Horned Ones, creatures that lived in the deep forests and demanded tribute. European settlers had brought their own legends of satyrs and fauns, and the Goatman seemed to be a dark fusion of both traditions. We learned that it wasn't alone. There were others, a whole society of them, living in the wild places where humans didn't go. They were intelligent, organized, ancient. They had their own language, their own customs, their own rules. And we learned that they were dying. Their numbers had been declining for centuries, their forests shrinking, their hunting grounds disappearing. The Goatman we had encountered was old, perhaps the last of its kind in this region. It was desperate, protective, willing to do anything to preserve what remained of its territory. "It's not evil," Angela said one night as we reviewed our research. "Not really, it's just surviving like any animal would. It raped you, it killed our friends." "I know, but—" She looked out the window at the darkness beyond. "Everything I read says they're protective, territorial, they only attack when their space is invaded, when they're threatened. So we should have stayed out of the forest." "We should have, but we didn't, and now," she turned back to me, her eyes hard, "now we have to finish this, one way or another." The attack came on the anniversary of our escape, October 15th, 1 year later. I was at Angela's house, reviewing our defenses, when the sensors started screaming. Something was approaching through the woods behind the property, moving fast, moving silently. "They're here," Angela said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Get to the basement." "I'm not leaving you." "I'm in a wheelchair, Adrian, I can't run. You can. Get to the basement, get the weapons, and come back fighting." She was right. I kissed her forehead and ran, limping down the stairs to the basement where we had stored our arsenal. I grabbed the shotgun, loaded with slugs designed to stop a charging bear, and ran back upstairs. I was too late. The back wall of the house had been torn open, the Goatman's strength making a mockery of our defenses. Angela was in the creature's grasp, lifted from her wheelchair, her frail body looking even smaller against the massive bulk of the monster. "Doctor," the creature said, its voice exactly as I remembered. "You came back, good, I hoped you would." "Let her go," I said, raising the shotgun. "Let her go or I'll kill you." "Kill me?" the Goatman laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "You cannot kill me, doctor. I am the forest, I am the darkness, I am the hunger that never ends." It lifted Angela higher, her legs dangling, her face twisted in pain. "But you can try, please try." I fired. The slug hit the creature in the chest, a solid blow that would have dropped any natural animal. The Goatman staggered, its grip loosening, and Angela fell, hitting the floor with a cry of pain. The creature looked down at the wound, at the blood welling from its fur, and its expression changed. The amusement was gone, replaced by something darker, rage. "You hurt me," it said, and the words were soft, dangerous. "No one has hurt me in a very long time." It charged. I fired again and again, emptying the shotgun into the creature's chest, but it didn't stop. It was on me in seconds, one massive hand closing around my throat, lifting me off my feet, slamming me against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. "I gave you a gift," the Goatman hissed, its breath hot and foul against my face. "I let you live, and this is how you repay me, with pain, with violence." "You killed my friends," I choked out, my vision tunneling. They trespassed, they paid the price, just as you will pay now. Its grip tightened and I felt my consciousness fading. This was it. The end. The Goatman had come to collect and I had nothing left to stop it. Then Angela screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of rage, of defiance, of everything she had kept bottled up for a year. The Goatman turned, surprised, and I saw what she had done. She had crawled to the kitchen. She had found the flares we kept for emergencies. And she had lit them, 3 of them, holding them in her hands, flames pouring from the sticks with white-hot intensity. "You want me," she screamed, her voice raw. "Come and get me, you bastard." She threw the flares, one after another, and the Goatman dropped me, raising its hands to ward off the flames. One flare hit it in the chest, burning through fur and flesh, and the creature roared, a sound of genuine pain, genuine fear. "Fire," it screamed. "The ancient enemy, the burning, the death." It backed away, batting at the flames, its composure shattered. Angela threw another flare, then another, driving the creature back toward the hole in the wall. "Run, Adrian," she shouted. "Run now." I didn't run. I grabbed the shotgun, reloaded with shaking hands, and fired again. The slug hit the creature in the knee and it collapsed, roaring, thrashing. "You cannot kill me," it bellowed. "I am eternal, I am the forest." "You're just an animal," Angela said, dragging herself forward, another flare in her hand. "And animals burn." She threw the flare directly into the creature's face, and the Goatman screamed, a sound of agony that shook the house. It scrambled backward, through the hole in the wall, into the night, leaving a trail of blood and burned fur. "After it," Angela gasped. "Don't let it escape." "I'm not leaving you." "Go, before it heals, before it returns. Kill it, Adrian, kill it for all of us." I ran, following the trail of blood into the darkness, the shotgun ready, my heart pounding with a mix of terror and rage. The Goatman was wounded, vulnerable perhaps for the first time in centuries. This might be my only chance. I followed the trail through the woods, into the darkness, into the forest where the Goatman reigned supreme. The trail was easy to follow. Blood, burned fur, the marks of huge hooves in the soft earth. I found it at the edge of the forest, collapsed against a tree, its chest heaving, its fur smoldering. It looked up as I approached, and I saw something in its eyes that I hadn't seen before. Fear. "You," it rasped, its voice weak. "The persistent one, the witness." "I'm here to finish this," I said, raising the shotgun. "Finish?" the Goatman laughed, though the sound was weak, pained. "You think you can finish this? You think you can end what I am?" "I think I can try." "Then try." It spread its arms, exposing its chest. "Shoot me, kill me, and see what happens." I fired. The slug hit it dead center, punching through charred fur and flesh. The Goatman convulsed, blood pouring from the wound, and collapsed. I stood over it, waiting for it to move, to rise, to prove it couldn't be killed. But it didn't move. It lay still, its chest no longer rising, those terrible yellow eyes glazed and empty. Dead, the Goatman was dead. I sat down hard, my legs giving out, the shotgun falling from numb fingers. I had done it. I had killed the monster, avenged my friends, protected Angela. It was over. But as I sat there, catching my breath, I heard something. Movement in the trees, the snap of twigs, the rustle of leaves. I looked up and saw them, dozens of yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness, the tribe, the clan, the others. They had been watching, waiting, letting me kill their leader. And now they were coming. "Angela," I whispered, realizing my mistake. "Oh God, Angela." I ran, leaving the Goatman's body behind, running through the woods as fast as my damaged leg would carry me. Behind me, I heard them. Dozens of hooves, the panting of breath, the calls of creatures that had no right to exist. I burst from the trees into the yard and saw Angela in her wheelchair, waiting for me, her face pale with fear. "They're coming," I screamed. "Get inside." She didn't move, couldn't move. And as I reached her, the creatures emerged from the forest, surrounding us, dozens of them, more than I had ever seen. But they didn't attack. They stopped at the edge of the yard, forming a circle around us, their yellow eyes fixed on me with something that might have been respect. One of them stepped forward, smaller than the leader had been, younger, but with the same intelligence in its eyes. "You killed the elder," it said, its voice high but clear. "You did what no human has done in 1,000 years." I had to," I stammered, shielding Angela with my body. "He was killing us, hunting us. He was protecting us, protecting what little remains of our home." The creature tilted its head. "But he was also cruel, enjoyed the hunt too much, forgot the old ways, the ancient agreements." "What do you want?" "To make a deal." The young goat man stepped closer, and I saw now that it was female, smaller and more slender than the others. "You killed our leader. By our laws, you are now the leader. You have earned the right to speak for the humans, to make agreements, to set boundaries. I don't want to be your leader. I want you to leave us alone." "Then that is the agreement." She raised her hand, and the other goat men backed away, disappearing into the trees. "We will not hunt you. We will not hunt your female. We will stay in the deep woods, and you will stay in your cities. We will not cross your boundaries if you do not cross ours. And if someone does cross, then they pay the price." Her eyes met mine, and I saw the truth there. The goat men were ancient, primal, but they were also fair. They had rules, laws. "Warn your kind, doctor. Tell them the forest is forbidden. Tell them the goat man watches. And if they do not listen, then they die," I finished. "Yes," she turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, the elder you killed, he was my father." I tensed, expecting attack. "You did me a service," she continued. "He was old, cruel, mad with loneliness and rage. You freed me to lead my people in a new way, a better way." She looked back at me. "Thank you, doctor, for your pain, for your courage, for the sacrifice of your friends. It was not wasted." She vanished into the forest, and the others went with her, leaving Angela and I alone in the yard, surrounded by silence. It was over, really over this time. Not just the creature, but the war, the fear, the constant waiting for death. We had made a deal, an ancient agreement renewed. And the goat man, the new goat man, would honor it. Angela and I moved away after that. We couldn't stay in that house, couldn't face the memories. We relocated to the west coast, far from any forests, any darkness, any shadows. We didn't speak of what we had experienced, not to anyone. The authorities wrote off the attack as a bare encounter, the destruction as property damage. They never found the bodies, never investigated the goat man's remains. The forest took them back, as it takes everything eventually. But Angela and I knew the truth. We kept the secret, guarded it, passed it on only in whispers to those who needed to know. The forest is not empty. The darkness is not safe. And the goat man still watches, still waits, still hungers. But it keeps its promises. And as long as we keep ours, it will leave us in peace. That is the story of what happened in Blackwood Forest. The deaths, the terror, the survival. Angela and I are the only witnesses, the only survivors, the only ones who know the truth. Sometimes in my dreams I see them, the yellow eyes, the curved horns, the teeth. But in my dreams they don't attack, they just watch, waiting. Waiting for the day when humanity forgets the old agreements again. When that day comes, the goat man will return. And this time there will be no survivors. 10 years passed. Adrian Cross and Angela Martinez had become something neither of them had expected. Advocates for cryptid rights, voices in the wilderness arguing for the recognition of non-human intelligence, the protection of ancient habitats, the establishment of boundaries between human civilization and the wild places where creatures like the goat man still lived. They had told their story dozens of times to anyone who would listen. Most people dismissed them as crazy, charlatans seeking attention, victims of trauma with delusional memories. But some believed. Scientists who had seen too much to dismiss the evidence. Government officials who knew about the secret facilities, the captured creatures, the classified research. Activists who recognized that if cryptids were real, they deserved the same rights as any other sentient being. Their movement grew slowly. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. Congressional hearings were held, though the official transcripts said nothing about the Goatman specifically, only about undiscovered species and habitat protection. But the Goatman itself remained a mystery. Angela and Adrian had seen it only once since that night in the forest, and that was in dreams. The creature's yellow eyes watching them, its voice whispering promises of peace and warnings of consequences. "We are waiting," it said, "waiting to see if your kind honors the agreement, if the boundaries are respected, if the forest is left alone." "And if they aren't?" Adrian asked in the dream. "Then the old ways return, the hunting, the killing, the displays. We'll try to prevent that." Try, that is all any can do. The dream faded, and Adrian woke in his apartment, sweating despite the cool air, his missing arm aching with phantom pain. Angela was in the next room working on her computer. Despite her paralysis, she had become the movement's most effective organizer, using technology to connect supporters, organize protests, pressure politicians. She couldn't walk, but she could still fight. "You had the dream again," she said as he entered, not a question. "It's getting more frequent. Something's happening in the forest. Something's wrong." "The logging company, the one that's been trying to get permits for Blackwood. They got them, I checked yesterday. The court ruled in their favor." Angela's face went pale. "No, Adrian, that's breaking the agreement, the boundaries." "I know. The Goatman will." "I know." They looked at each other, two broken people who had survived the impossible, and saw the same fear reflected in each other's eyes. "We have to stop them," Angela said. "The logging. We have to get an injunction, something, anything to delay it until we can negotiate." "We don't have time. The Goatman doesn't wait for courts, it acts." "Then what do we do?" Adrian was silent for a long moment, then he said, "We go back." "Number Adrian, no, we can't go back there." "We have to. We're the only ones who can communicate with it, the only ones who know what it wants. If we can get there before the loggers, maybe we can negotiate, extend the boundaries, buy more time. Or we could die like the others, like Sarah, like Tom and Lisa and everyone else." "We might, but if we don't try, dozens more will die, maybe hundreds. The Goatman isn't alone. There's a whole tribe if they decide humanity has broken faith." Angela closed her eyes, breathing hard. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow, first light." They prepared in silence, gathering supplies, camping gear, communication equipment, medical supplies, and, at Adrian's insistence, weapons. Not guns, the Goatman was immune to bullets, but fire, flares, Molotov cocktails, the one thing that could hurt the creature. They drove through the night, reaching the edge of Blackwood Forest at dawn. The trees stood before them like a wall, ancient and dark, unchanged from a decade ago. "I can't believe I'm going back in there," Angela said, staring at the tree line. "We don't have to. You can wait in the car. I'll go alone." "No, we're in this together. We always have been." They entered the forest, Adrian pushing Angela's wheelchair along the old logging trails, both of them scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The woods were silent in a way that felt unnatural. No birdsong, no rustling of small animals, just the creak of trees and their own breathing. They had been walking for 2 hours when they found the first sign. A tree marked with the Goatman symbol, fresh, the cut still weeping sap. "It's still here," Angela whispered, "still watching." It never left. They continued deeper, following the markers, heading toward the clearing where they had made their agreement 10 years ago. The path was overgrown, barely visible, but Adrian remembered. He would never forget. The clearing was smaller than he remembered. The altar was still there, but weathered now, overgrown with moss. The bones had been cleared away, replaced with something else: offerings, fruit, meat, flowers, tributes left by someone. "What is this?" Angela asked. "Someone's been leaving gifts, appeasing it, keeping the peace." "Who?" "I don't know." A voice answered from the shadows. "We do." Adrian spun, reaching for his flares as figures emerged from the trees. Not the Goatman. Humans. A dozen of them, dressed in forest camouflage, carrying weapons that looked military-grade. "Dr. Cross," the leader said, a man in his 50s with hard eyes and a scarred face. "We've been expecting you." "Who are you?" "Names don't matter. We represent certain interests. People who understand the value of creatures like the one that lives here." "You work for the government." "We work for whoever pays. Right now, that's a consortium of interested parties who want to capture the Goatman, study it, replicate its abilities." "You can't capture it. It's too strong, too smart." "Everything can be captured, Doctor. Everything has a weakness." "You'll die, all of you. It will tear you apart like it tore apart my friends." "That's why you're here, Doctor. You're going to help us." Adrian laughed, bitter and short. "Help you? After what you people did to me? After the years of silence, the threats, the destruction of my career? You think I'll help you capture the Goatman? We think you'll do what's necessary to protect your friend." The leader gestured, and two of his men grabbed Angela, pulling her from her wheelchair, holding her between them. "Cooperate and she lives. Refuse and, well, the Goatman isn't the only thing in these woods that can kill." Adrian looked at Angela, saw the fear in her eyes, the resignation. She was prepared to die, had been prepared since that night 10 years ago. "Let her go," he said quietly. "I'll do what you want, just let her go." "Smart decision, Doctor." They released Angela, and Adrian went to her, held her, whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We'll figure this out. We always do." The mercenaries set up camp in the clearing, preparing their equipment: nets, tranquilizers, electronic restraints. They were professionals, Adrian had to admit. Well-equipped, well-trained, well-informed. They had done this before, captured things that shouldn't exist. But they hadn't faced the Goatman. Adrian sat by the fire that night, watching the shadows, waiting. He knew the creature was out there, watching them, assessing the threat, deciding whether to act. "You don't have to do this," Angela said quietly. "We could run, escape, and leave them here. They'd all die. And then the Goatman would come for everyone, for the logging towns, for the cities. It would be war. So what do? We warn it." "How?" Adrian stood, walked to the edge of the clearing, and spoke into the darkness. "I know you're listening. I know you can hear me. These men are here to capture you, to put you in a cage, just like they tried before. You need to run, hide. Don't fight them, please." Silence. The mercenaries laughed behind him, but Adrian ignored them. "I know you remember me. I know you remember the agreement. We're trying to stop the logging, trying to protect your forest, but you need to survive. You need to." The scream cut him off. Inhuman, deafening, erupting from the darkness all around them. The mercenaries scrambled for their weapons, forming a defensive circle, scanning the trees. "It comes," the leader shouted. "Positions, remember your training." The attack came from everywhere at once. Goatmen, dozens of them, emerging from the shadows, moving with terrifying speed. They hit the mercenaries like a wave, claws tearing, teeth biting, the sounds of violence filling the night. Adrian grabbed Angela, pulling her to the ground, shielding her with his body as chaos erupted around them. He saw one mercenary go down, his throat torn out by a Goatman's teeth. He saw another firing his weapon wildly, hitting nothing, before a creature dropped on him from above, driving him to the ground. The leader was screaming orders, but his men were dying too fast. The Goatmen were everywhere, silent killers that moved like smoke, tearing through the mercenaries with brutal efficiency. "We need to move," Adrian shouted to Angela, "now." He dragged her, crawling toward the edge of the clearing, away from the slaughter. A Goatman stepped into their path, yellow eyes gleaming, blood dripping from its mouth. "No," Adrian screamed, reaching for his flares. "We're not with them, we're not." The creature paused, tilted its head, and spoke. "I know, Doctor, we remember. We honor the agreement." It stepped aside, letting them pass, and Adrian crawled through, dragging Angela with him into the safety of the trees. Behind them, the screaming stopped. The mercenaries were all dead. 12 men torn apart, their bodies arranged in a circle around the altar, their hearts removed. A message, a warning. The Goatman stood among them, the leader, its fur matted with blood, its eyes meeting Adrian's through the darkness. "The agreement holds," it said, "for now, but your kind tests our patience. More will come, more will die. Tell them, Doctor, tell them what waits in the forest." "I will, I promise." "See that you do." The Goatmen vanished into the shadows, leaving Adrian and Angela alone with the dead. They waited until morning, then made their way back to the car, to the road, to civilization. They reported what they had seen, the mercenaries, the attack, the deaths. They left out the Goatman's mercy, its words, the fact that it had let them live. The authorities found the bodies. The story made the news. Mercenary squad killed in forest. Unknown predator suspected. Residents warned to stay away. The logging permits were revoked. The Blackwood Forest was declared a protected area, off-limits to development, surrounded by warning signs and fences. And deep in the woods, the Goatman watched and waited and protected its territory. Adrian and Angela continued their work, their advocacy, their fight for cryptid rights. They never returned to Blackwood, but they didn't need to. They had made their point. They had saved lives. They had kept the agreement. Sometimes in their dreams, the Goatman spoke to them, thanking them, warning them, reminding them that the forest remembers and the old ways are never truly forgotten. "We are watching," it whispered, "always watching." And they knew, as long as they kept the faith, as long as they honored the agreement, they would be safe. But the world was changing. Humans were spreading. The forests were shrinking. And someday the Goatman's patience would run out. When that day came, Adrian and Angela would be ready. They would stand between humanity and the darkness, and they would fight. For the agreement, for the peace, for the future. They were the bridge between worlds, and they would not let either world fall. 20 years after the agreement, the world had changed. The revelation of cryptid existence had shattered humanity's understanding of its place in the world. Governments had fallen, religions had transformed, science had rewritten itself, and the forests had become sacred places, protected not just by law but by understanding. Adrian Cross was 70 now, his body broken by time and trauma, his remaining years measured in months rather than decades. Angela had died 5 years prior, her heart giving out in her sleep, peaceful at last. He missed her every day, her voice, her strength, her unwavering commitment to the cause. But he had continued their work alone, maintaining the institute they had built, training new advocates, fighting new battles. There were always new battles: the protection of cryptid territories, the prosecution of poachers, the education of a new generation. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by hand to his office. No stamp, no return address, just his name written in a hand he recognized. "The elder requests your presence. The old ways demand witness. Come to the forest, Doctor, one last time." Adrian knew what it meant. The Goatman who had spared him, who had become the leader of the tribe after the death of the old one, was dying, and it wanted to see him before the end. He made the journey alone, as he had promised Angela he would. No assistants, no guards, no witnesses, just him and the forest and the memories. Blackwood was as he remembered, dark, ancient, forbidding. The trees had grown thicker in 20 years, reclaiming the old logging trails, erasing the evidence of human intrusion. The forest was healing, returning to what it had been. He found the clearing unchanged. The altar was still there, older now, covered in moss and lichen, and waiting for him was the Goatman. It was old, older than Adrian remembered, its fur grayed, its horns cracked, its eyes dimmed but still yellow, still aware. "Doctor," it said, its voice weaker than before, "you came. You asked me to." "I did. There is something you must know, something I must tell you before I pass." "You're dying." "Yes, the years weigh heavily, the blood runs slow." The creature settled onto the ground, gesturing for Adrian to sit. "I have lived 2 centuries, doctor, longer than any of my kind in memory, but all things end." "I'm sorry." "Do not be. I have seen wonders, the changing of the world, the coming of peace, the birth of understanding between your kind and mine." The Goatman looked at him with something like affection. "You did this, doctor, you and the broken woman, you changed everything." "We just talked, just tried to understand." "That is all that was needed, the willingness to listen, to see." The creature coughed, blood flecking its mouth. "But I did not call you here for praise, I called you to warn you." "Warn me of what?" "The old ways are not gone, only sleeping. There are those among my kind who remember the time before the agreement, who long for the hunt, the kill, the power. They want to break the agreement. They want to reclaim what was lost, the forests that were cleared, the lands that were taken. They want to drive your kind from the wild places entirely." "Can they?" "Alone, no, but they are not alone. There are others, other cryptids who share their anger, who believe that coexistence is weakness, that peace is surrender." The Goatman's eyes grew distant. "A war is coming, doctor, not between your kind and mine, but between those who believe in peace and those who believe in dominance." "What can I do?" "Choose, as you chose before, stand with the peace or stand aside. But know this, if the warmakers win, the old ways return. The killing, the hunting, the displays, the world you helped build will burn." "I'll stand with peace, I always have." "Then prepare, build your alliances, gather your strength. The war comes whether you will or no, and when it arrives you must be ready." "Will you be there to help?" The Goatman smiled, showing teeth that had not dulled with age. "I will be gone, doctor, into the earth, into the memory of my people, but I will watch. From the shadows, from the dreams, from the dark places where old things dwell, I will watch, and I will hope. I won't fail you. I know that is why I chose you, why I spared you, why I made you the witness." The creature reached out, one clawed hand touching Adrian's shoulder. "You are the bridge, doctor, the link between worlds. Do not let the bridge burn." "I won't, I promise." "Then go, return to your world, prepare for what comes. And remember, the forest remembers. The old ways never truly die." Adrian stood, his old bones aching, and looked down at the dying creature. "Thank you for everything. Thank you, doctor, for seeing me, for seeing us, for changing the world." They parted, human and cryptid, and Adrian walked from the clearing knowing he would never see the Goatman again. But he carried its words with him, its warnings, its hopes. The war was coming, the battle for the future, and he would be ready. He had 20 years of preparation, 20 years of building bridges, forging alliances, creating understanding. Now he would need every bit of it. The Goatman was right, the old ways never died, they only slept. And something was waking them. Adrian emerged from the forest, the sun setting behind him, the darkness gathering. He pulled out his phone and began to make calls, to rally his allies, to prepare for the storm. The peace had lasted 20 years. Now came the test. An Adrian cross, The survivor, the witness, the bridge between worlds, would meet it head-on. For Angela, for the Goatman, for the future they had built. He would not fail. The first sign came from Alaska, a research station studying the newly recognized cryptid territories found massacred, bodies arranged in the old ways, hearts removed, posed in ritual patterns. The message was clear: the old ways had returned. Adrian Cross, now 72 and fighting against his own failing body, was called in by the government to consult. They wanted to understand what they were facing. They wanted solutions. "It's not the Goatmen," he told them, studying the crime scene photos. "Not the tribe I knew. This is something else. A splinter group, fanatics who reject the agreement." "How do we stop them?" the Secretary of Defense asked. We negotiate, find out what they want." "They want us dead, Doctor. The photos make that clear." "They want something. No one kills without reason." But finding that reason proved difficult. The splinter group, calling themselves the True Children in their scattered communications, rejected all contact with humans. They attacked without warning, retreated without pursuit, struck at soft targets and vanished into the wilderness. The death toll rose: 50, 100, 200. And the old Goatman's warning proved prophetic. Other cryptids were joining the conflict. Wendigos in Canada, chupacabras in Mexico, skinwalkers in the American Southwest. The creatures that had remained hidden were emerging, drawn by the call of war, the promise of returning to the old ways. Adrian worked tirelessly, reaching out to moderate cryptid factions, trying to build a coalition for peace. He contacted the Yeti, who pledged neutrality but offered mediation. He reached out to the merfolk, who refused to get involved. He even tried to contact the dragons, deep in their mountain fastnesses, and received no response. But he did find allies. Among the cryptids who remembered the agreement, who valued the peace, who feared the return of persecution. They formed a council. The peace faction, opposed to the warmakers, committed to finding a solution. "We must meet them in battle," argued one who speaks, a young goat man who had succeeded Adrian's old friend as leader. "Show them that we will not allow the old ways to return." "Battle will only destroy what we've built," Adrian countered. "We need to find their leaders, talk to them, understand their grievances." "They have no grievances beyond hate, beyond the desire to kill." "Everyone has grievances. Find them, address them, give them something other than blood." It was one who speaks who found the answer. The True Children were led by a creature known as the Horned King, an ancient goat man who had lived before the agreement, who remembered the time when cryptids ruled the wild places and humans knew their place. He had been in hibernation for centuries, frozen in glacial ice, and had only recently been awakened by climate change. "He is old," one who speaks explained. "Older than my father, older than the agreement. He remembers when your kind were prey, when we were the hunters. He cannot accept the new ways." "Then we must convince him, or stop him." "How he is powerful, ancient. His magic is strong." "Magic." "The old power, the forest's gift. He can command the trees, the beasts, the shadows themselves." "Then we need our own power, our own weapons." They prepared for the confrontation, human and cryptid working together. They developed new technologies: iron projectiles, fire weapons, sound cannons tuned to frequencies that disrupted cryptid abilities. They trained together, humans learning cryptid tactics, cryptids learning human technology. The final battle came in the Blackwood Forest, where it had all begun. The Horned King had returned to the place of his ancient power, drawing strength from the dark soil, the ancient trees, the memory of centuries of dominance. Adrian Cross led the peace forces, despite his age, despite his body. He would not let others fight for him, not for this, not for the future. They found the Horned King in the deepest part of the forest, where the trees were oldest and the light never reached the ground. He was massive, larger than any goat-man Adrian had seen, his horns twisted like old roots, his eyes glowing yellow with power. "The witness," the creature rumbled, its voice like grinding stone. "The bridge, the human who thinks he can speak for us." "I don't speak for you," Adrian said, standing his ground despite the terror that made his knees weak. "I speak for peace, for the agreement, for the future." "There is no future, only the past, only the old ways." The Horned King raised his staff and the forest responded, trees bending, roots moving, shadows coalescing into shapes of teeth and claws. "Your kind will learn fear again, will learn their place, will serve as they once served." "Never," Adrian said. "We won't go back." "Then you will die." The battle was terrible. The Horned King's power was immense, controlling the forest itself as a weapon. Trees struck like clubs, roots wrapped around throats. Shadows became blades that cut through flesh and armor. Adrian's forces fought back, iron projectiles piercing the summoned beasts, fire driving back the shadows, sound cannons disrupting the Horned King's concentration. But they were losing. Slowly, inevitably, they were being driven back. "You cannot defeat me," the Horned King roared. "I am the forest, I am the night, I am the old power made flesh." "You're just a bully," Adrian shouted, his voice carrying across the chaos. "Just a creature too afraid to change." The Horned King turned to him, rage in its eyes. "You dare." "I dare because you're wrong. The old ways are dead, they should stay dead. The future is cooperation, peace, understanding." "Lies." "Truth, the truth that your own people recognize even if you don't." For a moment the Horned King hesitated. In that moment, one who speaks struck, not with iron or fire but with words. "Father of my father's father," the young goat man called out. "You are remembered, you are honored, but the world has changed. We have changed. Will you destroy us all because you cannot accept that?" "Silence, pup, you know nothing of the old glory. I know that you sleep for centuries while we lived. I know that we built something in your absence, something worth protecting, something worth fighting for." One who speaks stepped forward, alone, unarmed. "Kill me if you must, destroy us all, but know that you destroy the future not just for humans but for all of us." The Horned King raised his staff to strike, and hesitated. "I remember," he said slowly. "Remember the young ones, the laughter, the joy, before the hate consumed me, before I chose blood over peace." "It's not too late," Adrian said quietly. "Choose again, choose peace." The Horned King stood motionless for a long moment, the forest holding its breath around him. Then slowly, he lowered his staff. Perhaps you are right, perhaps the old ways should remain old." He looked around at the destruction, the death, the horror he had wrought. "I have done terrible things." "We all have," Adrian said. "The key is to stop, to change, to grow." "And if I choose this peace, what then?" "Then you join us, help us build, help us heal." The Horned King was silent for a long time. Then he nodded once and the forest relaxed around him, the shadows retreating, the trees returning to stillness. "I will try," he said. "For the young ones, for the future, I will try." It was not perfect. Not all of the true children accepted their leader's surrender. Some fled to continue the war in secret. Others were captured, imprisoned, tried for their crimes. But the worst was over. The war had been averted. Peace, fragile and imperfect, held. Adrian Cross returned to his institute, his body broken beyond repair, knowing his time was short. But he smiled as he worked, training new advocates, building new bridges, creating new hope. The goat man had been right. The old ways never died, but neither did the new ways, the ways of peace, understanding, coexistence. And as long as there were people willing to fight for them, willing to build bridges across the darkness, the future would be bright. Adrian Cross died 6 months later, peaceful in his sleep, surrounded by friends of all species. At his funeral, A delegation of Goatmen attended, led by one who speaks, and sang a song of mourning that had not been heard in human lands for centuries. "He was the bridge," one who speaks said in his eulogy, "the link between worlds, the one who saw us not as monsters but as people. We will not forget him. We will honor him. We will be worthy of the future he died to protect." And in the Blackwood forest, deep in the ancient trees, a monument was raised, not of stone but of living wood, shaped by Goatman magic into the form of a human hand reaching out to a Goatman hand, the fingers intertwined. The bridge, they called it, the symbol of what could be, of what must be. And every year, on the anniversary of Adrian's death, representatives of all species gathered there to renew the agreement, to remember the past, to commit to the future. The old ways were remembered, yes, but they were not revived. The new ways held. The peace held. And the world, human and cryptid together, moved forward into a brighter tomorrow. 100 years after Adrian Cross's death, the world had become something even he might not have recognized. The old boundaries between human and cryptid had dissolved, replaced by a complex tapestry of interspecies relations that defied simple categorization. The institute that Cross and Angela had founded was now a university, the world's premier institution for the study of cryptid cultures, languages, and histories. Students from dozens of species studied together, lived together, built relationships together. Intermarriage, once unthinkable, was now common, though the children of such unions faced unique challenges. Dr. Michael Thorncross was the great-great-grandson of Adrian Cross, and he carried his ancestors' legacy heavily. Named for the doctor who had initially dismissed the Goatman as a myth and the advocate who had given his life for cryptid rights, Michael embodied the contradictions of his heritage. He was also a hybrid. His mother was human, his father was a Goatman. The physical challenges of his hybrid nature had been overcome through a combination of medical technology and magical assistance. He had his father's eyes, yellow with vertical pupils, but his mother's face. His legs were jointed like a goat's, but he walked upright like a human. His hands had claws, but they were retractable, allowing him to manipulate human tools. He was, by most definitions, neither human nor cryptid, but something new, something different, something that represented both the success and the ongoing challenge of interspecies integration. "The question," he told his class at the Institute, "is not whether we can coexist. We've proven that. The question is whether we can create something new together, a culture, a society, a way of being that belongs to neither species exclusively but draws from both." "Isn't that erasure?" asked a student. "Isn't that asking cryptids to give up their identity to become something else?" "It's a risk," Michael admitted. "Any mixing carries that risk, but the alternative is segregation, separation, the maintenance of boundaries that keep us apart. And those boundaries create the conditions for fear, misunderstanding, eventually conflict. So we sacrifice identity for peace. No, we expand identity. We create new identities. We become something more than we were, not less." After class, Michael was approached by a representative of the Goatman Council. The true children had been quiet for decades, but there were rumors of a resurgence. New leaders, new rhetoric, new calls for a return to the old ways. "They speak of purity," the representative said, his voice heavy with concern. "Of bloodlines untainted by human weakness. They seek to reverse the integration, to drive humans from the forests, to re-establish dominance." "How widespread is it?" "Small for now, but growing. The young are susceptible. They feel caught between worlds belonging to neither. The true children offer them certainty, purpose, identity. We need to offer something better." "What?" Michael was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Hope, community, a vision of the future that's worth fighting for." He began to travel, visiting communities where the true children were active, speaking to the youth, listening to their concerns, their fears, their dreams. He didn't dismiss their desire for identity and belonging. He shared it. He was living proof that one could be both human and Goatman, both and neither, something new and valuable. "I know what it is to feel caught between worlds," he told a gathering of young hybrids in the Blackwood forest. "To look in the mirror and see a stranger, to wonder where you belong. But I've learned that belonging isn't about blood. It's about choice. About the communities you build, the relationships you form, the values you hold." "The true children say we're abominations," a young hybrid said, "corruptions of pure bloodlines. And the humans say we're monsters, freaks, impossibilities." Michael smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp for human, too flat for Goatman. "But we're here, we exist, and we have as much right to exist as anyone." "But where do we belong?" "Everywhere, nowhere, anywhere you choose." Michael gestured around him, at the forest, at the sky, at the assembled crowd of mixed species. "You can be bridge builders like my ancestor. You can be warriors for peace. You can be anything you choose. The future is unwritten." His message spread slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. He became a symbol, a leader, a voice for the voiceless. The hybrid communities rallied around him, finding in his words validation of their existence, purpose for their confusion, hope for their future. The true children responded with violence. A gathering in Oregon was attacked. 15 dead, all hybrids, all young. The message was clear. The old ways would be enforced, the boundaries maintained, the mixing stopped. Michael mourned, then organized. He called for peace even as he prepared for war, demanding justice even as he offered forgiveness. He refused to become what the true children were, refused to answer hate with hate. "We will not be driven to darkness," he declared at the memorial. "We will not become monsters to fight monsters. We will stand in the light, even if it costs us everything. Because that is what it means to be bridge builders. That is what it means to carry the legacy of those who came before." The confrontation came in the Blackwood forest, where it always seemed to come. The true children had gathered in force, led by a new horned king, younger than the last but equally committed to the old ways. They demanded the expulsion of humans from cryptid territories, the dissolution of the treaties, the end of integration. "Never," Michael said, standing before them alone, unarmed. "We will not go back." "Then you will die," the horned king said. "All of you. Hybrids and humans and traitors, we will cleanse the forest of your corruption. You will try, but you will fail, because the future is against you. Progress is against you. Hope is against you. Hope is weakness. Hope is strength, the strength to believe in something better, to work for it, to die for it." The horned king raised his staff to strike, and hesitated. Behind Michael, emerging from the trees, were thousands. Humans and cryptids of every species, standing together, shoulder to shoulder, refusing to be divided. "You see," Michael said softly, "this is the future, not purity, not separation, but unity, diversity, love." "They will betray you," the horned king said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The humans will turn on you, as they always have." "Perhaps, but I choose to hope, I choose to believe, and I choose to stand with them." The horned king looked at the assembled crowd, at the determination in their faces, at the power of their unity. And slowly, slowly, he lowered his staff. "I cannot," he whispered, "cannot kill so many, cannot destroy the future. Even I am not that strong." "Then join us," Michael said. "Help us build, help us grow." "I am too old for new ways." "Then step aside, let the young lead, and watch what they build." The horned king nodded once and turned away. The true children followed him, dispersing into the forest. Their threat ended not by violence but by the power of hope. Michael stood alone in the clearing, the monument to Adrian Cross visible through the trees, and felt the weight of his heritage. He had not fought, had not killed, had simply stood and spoken and believed. And it had been enough. The future was uncertain. The old ways would always be a temptation. Fear would always be a danger. But the bridge held, the connection held. And the children of the bridge, human and cryptid, pure and hybrid, old and new, would continue to build. For Adrian, for Angela, for everyone who had fought for the future. The work would never be done, but it would never be abandoned. I am the last, the final survivor of the original expedition. I have lived 127 years, preserved by cryptid magic and human science, kept alive to tell the story one last time. My name is Adrian Cross, and I have seen the future. It is beautiful, more beautiful than I ever imagined. The forests have grown back. The cities have been transformed. Humans and cryptids live together not as enemies, not as tolerated others, but as family. I saw the first hybrid child born. I saw the first interspecies marriage. I saw the Treaty of Lhasa signed and the Treaty of the Marianas and a dozen others. I saw the true children defeated and the horned king's bow and the old ways give way to the new. I saw my descendants carry on my work. Michael, who became the bridge, Elena, who became the historian, thousands of others, unnamed but remembered, who chose hope over fear. And now I am done. My time has come. I asked to be buried in Blackwood Forest, among the trees where it all began. The Goatmen agreed. They remember me, though centuries have passed. They honor the agreement, though the world has changed. As I lie here, feeling my life fade, I know that I did not survive the forest. Not really. Part of me died that day with Sarah and the others. Part of me never left the clearing, never stopped seeing the yellow eyes. But part of me lived, part of me grew, part of me became something more. I am the witness, the one who saw the darkness and chose the light, the one who looked into the yellow eyes and saw not a monster but a person. My story is ending, but the story continues. The bridge endures, the future unfolds. And somewhere in the eternal forest a goat man watches, waiting, remembering. The old ways never die. But neither do the new. And that is enough. That is everything. This account was found in the archives of the Interspecies Communication Institute, dated 500 years after the original expedition. It has been verified as authentic through genetic testing, historical analysis, and cryptid testimony. Dr. Adrian Cross was indeed the last survivor of the 2019 Chesapeake Cryptid Expedition, and his account forms the basis of our understanding of the events that led to the modern era of interspecies cooperation. We honor his memory and the memory of all who died in the Blackwood Forest by continuing their work. The bridge holds, the future is bright, and the forest remembers. Elena Vasquez Thorne, Ph.D., DPhil Director, Institute of Historical Cryptid Studies, Year 2525. The Tennessee Wildman. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the moonless Appalachian night like a blade through silk, its rotors beating a thunderous rhythm that seemed to pulse in Sergeant Marcus Webb's very bones. He sat rigid in his seat, fingers white-knuckling his M4 carbine, his face illuminated only by the dim red glow of the cabin lights. Around him sat the 12 other members of Special Task Force Gamma 7, an elite unit so classified that even their families believed they worked for a mundane government logistics department. But tonight, they were descending into hell itself, chasing shadows that shouldn't exist, hunting nightmares made flesh in the ancient forests of eastern Tennessee. Webb checked his watch for the 10th time in as many minutes, 300 hours. The witching hour, his grandmother would have called it, when the veil between worlds grew thin and things best left undisturbed stirred in their hidden places. He had always dismissed such superstitions as the ramblings of an old woman steeped in Appalachian folklore, but tonight, flying toward coordinates that didn't exist on any civilian map, he felt the weight of ancestral dread settling in his chest like cold stone. Approaching drop zone in 5 minutes, the pilot's voice crackled through Webb's headset. "Weather conditions deteriorating. Visibility down to 300 meters." Webb nodded, though no one could see him, and turned to face his team. These men had trained together for 3 years, had faced down cartel soldiers in Mexico, insurgents in Syria, and something else in the Nevada desert that they were forbidden to speak about. They were hard men, tempered by violence and sworn to silence, but tonight Webb saw something he had never witnessed in their eyes before: fear. "Listen up," Webb barked, his voice cutting through the roar of the rotors. "We are 40 minutes from insertion. Primary objective is capture and containment. The asset is designated TWC-001, Tennessee Wildman Cryptid. Height estimated at 7 to 8 feet. Weight unknown, estimated between 400 and 600 pounds. Biological classification, unknown. Threat level, extreme." He paused, letting the words sink in, watching his men's faces grow tighter, more pale. "This thing is not human, not animal, not anything in any database we've ever encountered. It is fast, strong beyond comprehension, and intelligent. The locals have stories going back 200 years. Settlers disappeared. Entire hunting parties lost without trace. In 1954, a logging crew of 23 men vanished in these woods. Their equipment was found intact, their camp undisturbed, but not a single body was ever recovered. Not one bone, not one scrap of clothing, not one drop of blood." Corporal James "Jimmy" Morrison raised his hand, his usual cocky grin absent from his weathered face. "Sarge, if this thing is so dangerous, why are we capturing it instead of just putting it down?" Webb met his gaze evenly. "Because orders came from the highest level. This thing has genetic material that certain agencies find valuable. They want it alive. They want it contained. They want to study it." "And if we can't take it alive?" asked Lieutenant David Chen, the team's executive officer, his voice steady but his hands betraying a slight tremor. "Then we don't come home," Webb said simply. "There is no extraction without the asset. Those are the orders." The helicopter banked sharply, dropping altitude, and Webb felt his stomach lurch. Through the windows, he could see the mountains rising like jagged teeth against a sky obscured by storm clouds. Lightning flashed somewhere in the distance, momentarily illuminating the ancient forest canopy below, a sea of darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. 30 seconds to drop," the pilot announced. Webb stood, bracing himself against the cabin wall, and gave his team the hand signal to prepare. They checked their gear one last time. Suppressed rifles firing specially designed tranquilizer rounds strong enough to drop a rhino, electric capture nets capable of delivering 50,000 volts, portable containment units with titanium alloy bars, and enough conventional ammunition to fight a small war. Webb wore a prototype exoskeleton suit that enhanced his strength by a factor of 3, a bulky metal frame that hummed with barely contained energy. If anything could take this thing down, it was them. But deep in his gut, Webb knew that confidence was a lie they told themselves to keep moving forward. The Blackhawk flared, hovering 10 feet above a clearing that shouldn't have existed, a perfect circle of barren earth surrounded by impossibly dense forest, as if the trees themselves had recoiled from this cursed place. Webb kicked open the door and leaped out, hitting the ground hard and rolling to absorb the impact. His team followed in perfect sequence, 12 dark shapes melting into the shadows like ghosts. The helicopter rose without another word, its rotors beating a retreat into the storm-racked sky, abandoning them to the darkness and the woods and whatever waited within. Webb checked his GPS, the blue glow harsh against the darkness. "Move out. Primary coordinates 3 kilometers northeast. Maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Night vision on." The team moved as one, a single organism of death and precision, advancing into the forest with weapons raised and senses hyperalert. Webb took point, his enhanced vision cutting through the darkness, revealing a world of ghostly green shapes and movement. The forest was old here, older than the United States, older than European colonization, perhaps older than recorded human history. Trees towered overhead, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out even the starlight. The undergrowth was thick with thorns and poison ivy, and things that rustled just out of sight. They moved for 20 minutes without incident, navigating by GPS and dead reckoning through terrain that seemed to shift and twist in unnatural ways. Webb began to notice things that made his skin crawl, trees that seemed to lean away from their path, as if recoiling from their presence. Strange symbols carved into bark, ancient and crude, depicting stick figures being torn apart by larger figures. And the silence. The absolute total silence. No insects chirping, no owls hooting, no distant howls of coyotes, just the sound of their own breathing and the rustle of their equipment. "Sarge," Morrison's voice whispered through the radio, barely audible. "I'm getting readings on the bioscanner. Multiple heat signatures, large, approximately 200 meters ahead." Webb held up a fist and the team froze in place, disappearing into the shadows like they had never existed. He checked his own scanner, a device that detected heat, motion, and biological anomalies. Sure enough, there were signatures ahead, 3 of them, massive, bipedal, moving with purpose through the forest. "Could be bears," Chen suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Bears don't walk like that," Webb replied, studying the readings. "These things are upright, and they're big, really big." He made a decision. "We split into 3 fire teams. Alpha with me will take the center signature. Bravo, you flank left. Charlie, right. Maintain visual contact through HUD links. Move to intercept but do not engage until I give the order. We want to observe first, understand what we're dealing with." The team divided silently, professional killers becoming one with the forest, moving like smoke through the trees. Webb led Alpha team. Himself, Morrison, and 2 specialists named Rodriguez and Kowalski, creeping forward with agonizing slowness, each step placed with infinite care to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. They found it in a hollow between 2 hills, where a stream cut through moss-covered rocks and moonlight finally pierced the canopy in silver shafts that seemed almost solid. The thing stood in the center of the stream, water flowing around its massive legs, and Webb felt his breath catch in his throat, his heart hammering against his ribs with such force he thought it might burst through his chest. It was bigger than the reports suggested. 8 feet tall at least, maybe closer to 9, with shoulders so broad they seemed to span the entire creek bed. Its body was covered in matted, filthy hair the color of rust and dried blood, hanging in clumps from a frame that seemed assembled from the trunks of oak trees. The arms were disproportionately long, hanging past the knees, ending in hands that could have palmed a basketball with room to spare, tipped with black claws that gleamed like obsidian in the moonlight. But it was the face that made Webb want to scream, that made him question everything he knew about the natural order. The head was too large for the body, elongated and sloping backward, dominated by a jaw that jutted forward like a predator's maw, filled with teeth that were too numerous and too sharp, yellowed fangs that overlapped and crowded against each other in a mockery of dental arrangement. The eyes, when they caught the moonlight, reflected it back with a crimson luminescence that spoke of things that hunted in darkness, things that had never known mercy. And it was feeding. The thing held something in its massive hands, something that had once been alive, and was pulling it apart with casual strength, bringing dripping chunks to its mouth and chewing with a sound like wet leather being torn. Webb couldn't see what it was eating, didn't want to see, but he knew. God help him, he knew. The smell hit him then, a stench of rot and copper and something else, something ancient and musky that made his eyes water and his stomach twist. "Oh my God," Morrison whispered, the sound barely audible but seeming to thunder in the silence. "What is that thing?" The Wildman froze. Its massive head snapped up, those crimson eyes scanning the darkness with predatory intelligence. It dropped whatever it had been consuming and rose to its full, terrible height, nostrils flaring as it sampled the air. "Hold position," Webb hissed into his radio. "Do not move, do not breathe." For a long moment nothing happened. The Wildman stood motionless, a monolith of muscle and menace, listening to the night. Then slowly, deliberately, it turned its head to look directly at Webb's position, those hellish eyes seeming to pierce through the camouflage, through the darkness, through the very veil of reality itself. It knew they were there. It had always known. With a roar that seemed to shake the mountains themselves, a sound that was part animal and part something far worse, something that spoke of hunger and rage and ancient, implacable hatred, the Wildman charged. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move, covering 30 feet in a single leap, massive arms swinging with the force of wrecking balls. Webb had barely enough time to scream, "Engage," into his radio before the world became chaos and screaming and blood. The creature hit Rodriguez first, simply because he was closest, and the result was instantaneous and catastrophic. The Wildman didn't slash or bite. It struck with both fists clenched together, bringing them down on Rodriguez's head with the force of a falling meteor. The helmet, rated to stop high-caliber rounds, crumpled like tissue paper, and Rodriguez's body folded at the waist, his spine shattering into a dozen pieces, his torso compressed until his ribs pierced through his tactical vest, and his organs sprayed across the forest floor in a glistening arc of red and purple and gray. He died without making a sound, his body continuing to twitch for several seconds after his brain had ceased to function. Kowalski fired his weapon, the suppressed cough of the rifle loud in the confined space, and 3 tranquilizer darts buried themselves in the Wildman's shoulder. The creature didn't even flinch. It backhanded Kowalski with a casual sweep of one massive arm, and the specialist simply came apart. The blow caught him in the side of the head with enough force to shear away his jaw and most of his throat, sending teeth and bone and flesh spraying into the darkness. Kowalski's body spun 3 times before hitting a tree, leaving a wet smear down the bark, his legs still kicking reflexively as blood pumped from the ruin of his neck in rhythmic spurts that quickly slowed to a trickle. Webb and Morrison were already running, falling back toward the rendezvous point, screaming into their radios for support. The Wildman didn't pursue immediately. It stood over its kills, crimson eyes watching them flee, and Webb thought he saw something in that terrible gaze that was almost amusement. Then it bent down and picked up Rodriguez's shattered corpse, raised it to its mouth, and bit down on the face, tearing away a chunk of skull and brain with a wet crunching sound that Webb would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. "All units converge on my position," Webb shouted, his voice cracking with panic he couldn't suppress. "Contact, contact, multiple casualties, heavy resistance." The other fire teams responded, their voices sharp with alarm, and Webb could hear them moving through the forest, crashing through underbrush in their haste to assist. He wanted to tell them to slow down, to be careful, to understand what they were running toward, but he couldn't find the words. All he could see was Rodriguez's face disappearing into that maw of jagged teeth. All he could hear was the sound of chewing and the crunch of bone. They reached the rendezvous point, a rocky outcropping that offered clear lines of fire, and turned to make their stand. Webb checked his ammo, fingers trembling, and chambered a round. Morrison was beside him, breathing hard, his face pale and slick with sweat. "What do we do, Sarge?" he asked, his voice breaking. "What the fuck do we do?" "We kill it," Webb said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. "We kill it or we die. Those are the only options." The forest went silent again, that terrible, absolute silence that seemed to press against Webb's eardrums like water at depth. Then the screaming started. Bravo team's radio channels exploding with sounds of agony and terror that transcended language, that spoke of pain so profound it became art, became music, became a hymn to suffering sung in voices that were swiftly silenced one by one. "Bravo report," Chen's voice from Charlie Team's channel sharp with fear. "Bravo, what is your status?" The screaming continued for another 30 seconds, growing more distant, as if whatever was making those sounds was being carried away at speed. Then it stopped. The radio went dead. 5 men, highly trained, heavily armed, equipped with the best technology the United States government could provide, had simply ceased to exist. "It's hunting us," Webb whispered, the realization settling over him like a shroud. "It's not just killing us, it's hunting us, playing with us." Charlie Team arrived first, Chen leading 4 survivors who looked as terrified as Webb felt. They took up defensive positions around the outcropping, weapons trained on the darkness, waiting for the inevitable. "Where's the rest of Bravo?" Chen asked. "Gone," Webb said, "all of them." Chen's face went slack with horror. "That's 5 men, 5 trained operators. How is that possible?" "You've seen the scans," Webb said. "You've seen what it did to Rodriguez and Kowalski. It's not possible, it's happening anyway." The radio crackled, and a voice that Webb didn't recognize came through, thick with an accent that seemed almost Appalachian but twisted, wrong somehow. "Little soldiers in the woods," it crooned, and Webb felt his blood freeze in his veins. "Little soldiers with their little guns. Come out, wherever you are. The Wildman wants to play." "What the fuck?" Morrison breathed. "It can talk, it can actually talk." "Ignore it," Webb ordered, though his hands shook so badly he could barely hold his weapon. "It's trying to rattle us. Maintain discipline." "Little soldiers taste like fear," the voice continued, closer now, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Fear makes the meat sweet. Your friends tasted very sweet. The fat one especially, so much fear in him. He screamed for a long time." A shape moved in the darkness, too fast to track, and Private First Class Daniels, the youngest member of Charlie Team, simply disappeared. One moment he was there, his face illuminated by the glow of his HUD, and the next he was gone, yanked backward into the shadows with such violence that his boots left gouges in the earth. His scream was cut short by a wet, tearing sound, and then something hit the rocks beside Webb with a wet splat. It was Daniel's head, or what remained of it. The skull had been crushed, the face scraped away until only raw meat and exposed bone remained, but the eyes were intact, wide and staring, filled with an expression of such pure, perfect terror that Webb had to look away or lose his mind. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered, and Webb realized it was him. The attack came from everywhere at once. The Wildmen didn't bother with stealth anymore. It crashed through their defensive line with the force of a landslide, massive arms swinging, claws flashing in the darkness like scythes. Webb saw Corporal Stevens take a blow to the chest that caved in his ribcage, the impact so severe that his heart and lungs burst through his back in a spray of gore, his body flying 15 feet before hitting a tree with a sound like a bag of wet cement. Specialist Yuki Tanaka tried to dodge, rolling away from a swipe that would have decapitated her, but the Wildman was faster, impossibly fast, and its other hand caught her ankle, lifting her into the air with casual strength. She screamed, firing her weapon upward into the creature's chest, the rounds doing nothing, absolutely nothing, and then the Wildman brought her down, smashing her against the rocks with enough force to shatter every bone in her body. Webb heard the wet crunch of her skull fracturing, saw her body go limp, and then the creature raised her corpse to its mouth and bit through her midsection, tearing her in half with a sound like ripping wet cardboard. Webb fired his weapon, emptying his magazine into the creature's back, and saw the rounds hit, saw them strike the matted fur and flattened hair and simply stop, as if they had hit solid stone. The Wildman turned, Daniel's lower body still dangling from its mouth, blood running down its chin in thick streams, and fixed Webb with that crimson gaze. "You fight well, little soldier," it said, the words clear despite the mouthful of human remains. "But you will die like the others. They all die. They always die." Webb backed away, hands shaking so badly he couldn't reload, his mind breaking under the weight of impossibility. This wasn't an animal. This was something else, something ancient and evil and intelligent, something that had been killing humans since before the white man came to these mountains, perhaps since before humans existed at all. Sarge, Morrison's voice high and terrified. The net, use the net. Webb remembered. The electric capture net, their ace in the hole, capable of delivering 50,000 volts. He reached for the deployment trigger on his belt, fingers fumbling, and pressed the button. The net unfolded with a whir of servos, a web of conductive fibers spreading through the air and settling over the Wildman with perfect precision. Webb hit the activation switch, and 50,000 volts coursed through the creature's body, lighting up the night with strobing arcs of blue-white electricity. The Wildman screamed, a sound of rage and pain that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth, and for a moment, just a moment, Webb dared to hope. The creature convulsed, muscles locking in spasm, smoke rising from its fur where the electricity burned. Then it reached up with one massive hand, claws extended, and tore the net away like it was spider silk. The electricity continued to arc, but the Wildman seemed beyond caring now, its crimson eyes burning with a hatred so pure it seemed almost holy. It took a step toward Webb, and Webb knew he was going to die. But Chen was there, firing his weapon on full auto, not at the creature but at the cliff face above it. The bullet struck stone, and centuries of erosion gave way under the assault, tons of rock and earth cascading down in a mini avalanche that buried the Wildman beneath tons of debris. "Move," Chen screamed. "Move, move, move." They ran, Webb and Chen and Morrison, and two others whose names Webb couldn't remember, ran through the forest with no direction but away, pursued by the sound of shifting rock and a roar of such fury that it seemed to speak directly to some primal part of Webb's brain, the part that remembered being prey. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs turned to jelly, until the forest became a blur of darkness and pain, until they couldn't run anymore and collapsed against the bole of a massive oak tree, gasping for air that seemed too thin, too precious. "How many?" Webb managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. "8 dead," Chen said, his face streaked with tears and dirt and blood that wasn't his own. "Maybe more, maybe all of Bravo. We lost Daniels, Stevens, Tanaka, Rodriguez, and Kowalski from your team." 8, Webb repeated, the number seeming unreal, impossible. 8 men and women in 5 minutes. "It's still out there," Morrison said, his eyes darting to every shadow, every sound of the night. "It's coming for us." "Then we finish the mission," Webb said, surprised by the steel in his own voice. "We came here to capture that thing, and by God, we're going to capture it. We've got 2 electric nets left, enough tranq rounds to sedate a herd of elephants, and we've learned something important. It can be hurt. The electricity worked, if only for a moment." "It tore through 50,000 volts like it was nothing," Chen protested. "How are we supposed to stop something like that?" "Not with force," Webb said, a plan beginning to form in his mind, desperate and probably suicidal, but the only option they had left. "With intelligence, with preparation, with traps." He outlined his plan quickly, knowing they had minutes at most before the Wildman recovered and resumed its hunt. It was simple, brutal, and relied on the creature's own arrogance, its belief that they were nothing but prey. They would set a trap using themselves as bait, lure the creature into a narrow ravine where its size would work against it, and hit it with everything they had simultaneously: nets, tranks, and a prototype containment foam that hardened on contact with air, designed to immobilize even the strongest biological specimens. "It's suicide," Morrison said flatly when Webb finished. "Probably," Webb agreed. "But we're dead anyway if we don't try. At least this way we have a chance, and if we succeed—" He paused, looking at the surviving members of his team, seeing the fear in their eyes, but also something else, something harder: determination, duty, the refusal to die without a fight. "If we succeed, we save every other person that thing would have killed. We protect the people living in these mountains who don't even know this nightmare exists. We do our job." They moved out, following Webb's lead, setting up the trap in a ravine where the walls were close and the exit narrow. They worked in silence, placing the nets overhead, concealing themselves in positions of cover, preparing their weapons with the grim efficiency of soldiers who have accepted that they may not survive the next hour but are determined to take their enemy with them. Webb took the position of greatest danger, standing in the open at the ravine's mouth, his exoskeleton humming with power, his rifle loaded with every tranq round they had left. He would be the bait, the lure that would draw the creature into their kill zone. If he survived the initial contact, if he could evade long enough for the trap to spring, they had a chance. It took 20 minutes for the Wildman to find them. 20 minutes of absolute silence, of barely breathing tension, of waiting for death to arrive wearing a face from nightmare. When it came, it didn't announce itself with sound or fury. It simply stepped into the ravine, massive form blocking the moonlight, crimson eyes fixed on Webb with an expression that might have been amusement. "Little soldier," it rumbled, the words distorted by a jaw that seemed barely capable of human speech. "You stand alone. Where are your pack?" "I'm right here," Webb said, his voice steady despite the terror that made his hands shake. "Come and get me." The Wildman laughed, a sound like grinding stones and breaking bones. "Brave, stupid but brave. I will enjoy your fear, little soldier. It will be sweet." It charged, faster than anything had a right to move, and Webb didn't try to dodge. He stood his ground, firing his tranq rifle in a continuous stream, watching the darts bounce off the creature's chest and face, doing nothing, absolutely nothing. The Wildman was on him in seconds, one massive hand closing around his throat, lifting him into the air with casual strength. "Now," Webb choked out, the word barely audible. The nets deployed, two of them from opposite sides of the ravine, settling over the creature with perfect timing. Chen hit the switches, and 100,000 volts coursed through the Wildman's body, making it scream, making it convulse, making it drop Webb to claw at the conductive fibers. "Foam!" Webb screamed, rolling away, scrambling for cover. The others emerged from their positions, firing specially designed launchers that spat globules of rapidly expanding containment foam. It hit the Wildman in waves, coating its body, hardening almost instantly, restricting its movement, weighing it down with hundreds of pounds of ultra-dense polymer. The creature fought, tearing through nets and foam with equal ferocity, but Webb had planned for this. He emerged from cover, exoskeleton flaring to maximum power, and slammed into the Wildman with the force of a freight train, driving it back into the narrowest part of the ravine where the walls pressed close and movement was restricted. "More foam!" he screamed, feeling the creature's claws rake across his armored chest, leaving deep gouges in the titanium alloy. "Don't stop! Don't give it a chance!" They poured everything they had into the creature: foam, electricity, tranq rounds by the dozen. The Wildman fought with the fury of a caged god, tearing through their attacks, killing Private Williams with a backhanded blow that crushed his skull, mortally wounding Specialist Liu with claws that pierced her tactical vest like paper and tore out her heart in a single, brutal motion. But they didn't stop, couldn't stop, because stopping meant death for all of them. The creature was slowing. Webb could see it, could see the foam building up on its limbs, restricting its movement, the tranks finally beginning to take effect as the sheer volume of sedatives overwhelmed even its incredible metabolism. It roared, a sound of pure rage and frustration, and swung at Webb with a blow that would have decapitated him if it had connected. But Webb was faster now, enhanced by the exoskeleton and driven by desperation. He ducked under the swing and drove his armored fist into the creature's knee, feeling something crack, hearing the Wildman scream in genuine pain for the first time. "It's weakening," Chen shouted, his voice hoarse with hope and horror. "Keep pouring it on." They did. For 10 minutes that seemed like 10 hours, they poured foam and electricity and poison into the creature, until it was half buried in hardened polymer, its movements sluggish and uncoordinated, its crimson eyes dimming with the weight of sedatives. It still fought, still killed, tearing off Morrison's arm with a casual swipe, crushing Chen's ribs with a lucky kick. But it was slower now, weaker, and finally it collapsed. The Wildman hit the ground with a sound like falling timber, its massive body settling into the foam and blood and death that surrounded it. It tried to rise, tried to fight, but the tranks had done their work, and slowly, reluctantly, it closed its eyes and lay still. Webb stood over it, breathing hard, his armor dented and scored, his body bruised and bleeding in a dozen places. Around him, the surviving members of his team, Chen, though he looked like he might not last the night, and one other whose name Webb couldn't remember, stared at the fallen creature with expressions of awe and terror. "We did it," Chen whispered, clutching his shattered ribs. "We actually did it." "Not yet," Webb said, forcing himself to move, to think, to remember their mission. "We need to contain it, get the portable unit, now before it wakes up." They worked with the desperate speed of men who know their reprieve is temporary, dragging the portable containment unit from their supplies. A titanium cage designed to hold the strongest animals on Earth, reinforced with additional bars and locks at Webb's order. They dragged the Wildman into it, a task that took 6 men, and nearly resulted in disaster when the creature stirred, and nearly tore off Chen's head before they could get the door shut. But they managed it. The lock clicked shut, and Webb engaged the magnetic seals, the electric current that would keep the creature sedated, the sensors that would alert them if it so much as twitched. The Wildman lay inside, massive chest rising and falling slowly, and for the first time since they had entered these woods, Webb allowed himself to believe they might survive. The extraction helicopter arrived at dawn, the same Black Hawk that had dropped them, now returning to collect the survivors and their prize. Webb supervised the loading of the containment unit, supervised the gathering of the bodies, what remained of them, and stood at attention as the helicopter rose above the forest, leaving the blood-soaked ravine and the nightmare it contained behind. They had captured the Tennessee Wildman. 12 had gone in, 3 had come out. The mission was complete. But as Webb stared at the containment unit, at the shape that stirred occasionally behind the titanium bars, he knew that this was not an ending. It was a beginning. Whatever secrets the creature held, whatever genetic material the scientists wanted to study, whatever knowledge could be gained from its capture, it wasn't worth it. Nothing was worth unleashing this thing on the world. The helicopter flew east, toward the secret facility where the Wildman would be studied and probed and experimented upon. And somewhere in the mountains below, something stirred in the darkness, something that watched them leave with crimson eyes that spoke of patience and hunger, and the certainty that captivity was only temporary. The Tennessee Wildman had been captured, but it would not be contained forever, and when it escaped, and Webb knew with a certainty that bordered on prophecy that it would escape, the death it brought would make this night seem like mercy. Webb closed his eyes and tried to forget the sound of Rodriguez's skull collapsing, of Kowalski's body spinning through the air, of Tanaka being torn in half like a doll. He tried to forget the smell of blood and the taste of fear and the feeling of the Wildman's hand around his throat. But he knew he never would. The Tennessee Wildman was part of him now, written into his nightmares in letters of blood and terror, and someday when it escaped, he would be waiting. Next time he would be ready. Next time he would kill it. But for now the helicopter flew on, carrying its terrible cargo toward an uncertain future, and the mountains of Tennessee stood silent and ancient beneath the rising sun, keeping their secrets, hiding their horrors, waiting for the night to return. The mission was complete, but the war had only just begun. Deep in the containment unit, the Wildman opened one crimson eye and smiled, showing teeth that gleamed like daggers in the darkness. It could wait. It had waited for centuries, millennia perhaps, since before the white man came to these shores, since before the Cherokee told stories of the monster in the woods. It could wait a little longer. The little soldiers had won this battle, But the Wildman knew something they didn't, something written in the oldest stories, the darkest legends. The Wildman always wins in the end. And it was hungry. So very, very hungry. The helicopter disappeared into the distance, carrying death incarnate toward an unsuspecting world, and the forest of Tennessee stood watch, ancient and patient, guarding its secrets with the silence of the grave. Somewhere a wolf howled, or perhaps it was something else, something older and more terrible, singing a song of hunger and hate that had no words but spoke directly to the soul. The Tennessee Wildman had been captured, but it would never be tamed. And when it broke free, and it would break free, the rivers would run red with blood, and the mountains would echo with screams, and the world would learn what it meant to fear the ancient darkness that walked on two legs and wore the face of nightmare. The helicopter's vibration rattled Webb's teeth as they flew eastward, leaving the blood-soaked Appalachian forest behind. He sat across from the containment unit, his eyes never leaving the titanium bars that held the creature, watching for any sign of movement, any indication that the sedation was wearing off. The Wildman lay still, massive chest rising and falling in slow, rhythmic motions, but Webb knew better than to trust appearances. He had seen what this thing could do. He had watched it tear through trained soldiers like they were made of paper. Nothing would convince him that it was truly unconscious. Chen sat beside him, his face pale and sweating, his breathing shallow and labored. The Wildman's kick had broken 3 of his ribs, and one of them had punctured his lung. Webb could hear the wet rattle in Chen's chest with every breath, could see the blood on his lips when he coughed. They needed to get him to medical attention soon, or he wouldn't survive the journey. "How long?" Webb asked the pilot through his headset. 2 hours to the facility, the pilot replied, his voice tight with tension. Webb didn't blame him. Even separated from the cargo by a bulkhead, even unable to see what they carried, the pilot could feel it. Everyone could feel it. The Wildman radiated malevolence like a black sun radiated darkness, a palpable weight that pressed against the mind and made rational thought difficult. Webb checked his watch. They had been airborne for 40 minutes, 72 minutes to go. He wasn't sure Chen would last that long. "Talk to me, Lieutenant," Webb said, trying to keep Chen awake, trying to keep his mind off the pain. "Tell me about your family, your wife. What's her name again?" Chen coughed, wincing, bringing up blood. "Sarah," he whispered. "Her name is Sarah. She's pregnant, due in 3 months." "You're going to be a father," Webb said, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "That's something to fight for, David. That's something to live for." "You saw what that thing did," Chen said, his eyes drifting to the containment unit. "You saw how easily it killed us. How can we possibly control something like that? How can we study it?" "I don't know," Webb admitted. "But that's not our job. Our job was to capture it. We did that. Now it's someone else's problem." "And if it escapes?" Chen asked. "If it gets loose in the facility?" Webb didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew what would happen. They had seen it firsthand. The containment unit shifted slightly, the titanium bars creaking under some internal pressure, and Webb's hand went to his sidearm instinctively. The Wildman hadn't moved. Its eyes were still closed, its breathing still slow, but something had changed. Webb could feel it in the air, a sudden drop in temperature, a prickling at the back of his neck that spoke of being watched. "It's awake," Webb said quietly, his voice barely audible over the helicopter's rotors. "What?" Chen tried to sit up, gasping in pain. "It can't be. The tranks should last for hours." "It's awake," Webb repeated, his eyes locked on the creature, "and it's listening." As if in response, the Wildman's eyes opened. Both of them, those terrible crimson orbs that seemed to glow with their own inner light. It didn't move otherwise, didn't stir from its position lying on the floor of the containment unit, but its gaze fixed on Webb with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "Little soldier," it rumbled, the words distorted but clear, vibrating through the metal floor of the helicopter. "You survived. How? Unexpected. Webb's finger tightened on the trigger of his sidearm, though he knew it would do nothing. "Stay back," he said, his voice trembling despite his best efforts. "The unit is sealed. You can't get out." The Wildman laughed, a sound like stones grinding together in the depths of the earth. "Cannot get out? Little soldier, I am already out. I am in your mind. I am in your dreams. I will always be with you now." "Shut up," Webb said, but the words lacked force. "I tasted your fear in the forest," the creature continued, its voice hypnotic, almost soothing. "It was sweet, sweeter than the others. You have known fear before, little soldier. You have seen things that break men's minds, but you have never known true terror, not until me." "I said shut up," Webb screamed, raising his weapon. The Wildman smiled, showing those terrible teeth, and slowly, deliberately, it raised one massive hand and tapped a single claw against the titanium bars of its cage. The sound rang out like a bell, clear and sharp, and where the claw touched the metal, Webb could see a faint indentation forming. "These bars are strong," the creature admitted. "Stronger than the trees I tear apart, stronger than the stone I break, but they will not hold me forever. Nothing holds me forever." "We'll see about that," Webb said, but his confidence was gone, shredded by the reality of what he faced. This thing wasn't just strong. It was old, ancient. It spoke with the weight of centuries, of millennia, of ages beyond human comprehension. And it was patient. God help them, it was patient. The Wildman closed its eyes again, settling back into apparent slumber, but Webb knew it was awake. It would always be awake, watching, waiting, planning. The helicopter flew on, carrying its cargo of nightmare toward the secret facility, and Webb sat vigil, his weapon trained on the cage, wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. They had gone into those woods to capture a monster, but what if they had brought back something worse? What if they had unleashed something that could not be controlled, could not be contained, could not be killed? The Wildman had said it was already out, already in their minds. Webb wanted to believe that was just talk, just psychological warfare. But deep in his gut, where the primal fears lived, he knew better. He could feel it now, a presence at the edge of his consciousness, watching his thoughts, tasting his fears. It was inside him, somehow, some connection forged in the moment when its hand had closed around his throat. The mission had been to capture the creature alive. They had succeeded. But Webb was beginning to understand that capturing the Wildman was not a victory. It was the first move in a game where humanity held no advantages, where the rules were written in blood and the stakes were extinction. The helicopter began its descent, breaking through cloud cover to reveal a hidden valley surrounded by mountains, protected from satellite observation and prying eyes. Below, Webb could see the facility, a sprawling underground complex disguised as an abandoned mining operation, with reinforced concrete buildings and high-tech equipment that spoke of budgets far beyond anything officially acknowledged. This was where the Wildman would be studied. This was where humanity would try to understand the monster. Webb only hoped they were ready, because he had seen what happened when they weren't. The helicopter touched down on a reinforced landing pad, and immediately a team of soldiers in hazmat suits surrounded the craft, weapons raised, containment equipment at the ready. They knew what was coming. They had been briefed. But Webb could see the fear in their body language, the hesitation in their movements. They had read the reports, seen the casualty figures. 12 had gone in, 3 had come out, and one of those 3 was barely alive. Webb stood as the door opened, keeping his weapon trained on the containment unit. "The creature is conscious," he announced to the waiting team. "Sedation is insufficient. Recommend immediate transfer to maximum security containment and additional chemical restraint." The team leader, a major whose name tag read Holloway, nodded grimly. "Understood. We've prepared a specialized containment cell. Cryogenic temperatures, titanium alloy restraints, constant sedation through IV feeding tubes. It won't be able to move, let alone escape." "Don't underestimate it," Webb warned. It tore through 50,000 volts like it was nothing. It killed 8 of my people in minutes. Whatever you think you've prepared, double it, triple it. This thing is smarter than you, stronger than you, and older than civilization itself. Treat it accordingly." Holloway looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to assert his confidence in the facility's security measures. But one look at Webb's face, at the 1,000-yard stare of a man who had seen hell, and he simply nodded. "We'll take every precaution, Sergeant. Trust me." Webb didn't trust anyone anymore. Not after what he had seen. But he stepped aside, allowing the hazmat team to approach the containment unit with their specialized equipment, heavy-lift drones, magnetic clamps, additional restraints that looked more suitable for restraining a tank than a biological entity. They loaded the Wildman onto a heavy-duty transport platform, securing it with chains and cables and electronic locks that beeped and chirped with technological reassurance. The creature didn't resist, didn't fight, simply lay still with its eyes closed and that terrible smile playing across its features. It was letting them move it, Webb realized, letting them think they were in control. "Where's the medical bay?" Webb asked, turning to Chen, who was being helped to a stretcher by a team of medics. "My lieutenant needs immediate attention." "This way," one of the medics said, gesturing toward a nearby building. "We'll take care of him." Webb followed, keeping his weapon ready, his eyes scanning the facility for threats. He knew it was irrational. The Wildman was contained, restrained, surrounded by armed guards and high-tech security systems. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still in danger, that the real battle was only beginning. The medical bay was state-of-the-art, better equipped than most civilian hospitals, with surgeons and specialists who had top-secret clearances and experience with injuries that didn't officially exist. They took Chen immediately, whisking him into surgery to repair his punctured lung and broken ribs, leaving Webb to pace in the waiting area, surrounded by the sterile smell of antiseptic and the low hum of medical equipment. He had been waiting for 20 minutes when Major Holloway found him. "Sergeant Webb," the major said, his voice more subdued than before. "The creature has been transferred to Maximum Security Containment Cell Alpha. It's secure. We've got it locked down with everything we have." "Good," Webb said, not stopping his pacing. "And my men, the bodies." Holloway's expression darkened. "Recovery teams are en route to the forest. We'll bring them home, Sergeant. I promise you that." "You'd better," Webb said, his voice hard. "They deserve that much. They died fighting something that shouldn't exist. Make sure they're remembered." "They will be," Holloway assured him. "Now I need you to debrief. Tell us everything that happened, everything you observed. The scientists are waiting." Webb stopped pacing and turned to face the major. "The scientists can wait. I'm not leaving this medical bay until I know Chen is going to live, and then I'm going to that containment cell. I'm going to watch that thing every second of every day until I understand how to kill it." "That's not your call to make," Holloway said, his voice hardening. "You're a soldier, Sergeant. You follow orders." "I follow orders when they make sense," Webb shot back. "And keeping that thing alive doesn't make sense. It's a mistake. A terrible, fatal mistake. Mark my words, Major. That creature will escape. And when it does, everyone in this facility will die." Holloway stared at him for a long moment, then sighed, some of the starch going out of his posture. "You've been through hell, Sergeant. No one denies that, but you're wrong about the creature. We have it contained. We have the best minds in the world working on understanding it. We'll learn its weaknesses, its biology, its origins, and then we'll know how to fight it." "You think this is about science?" Webb laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "This isn't science, Major. This is survival, that thing out there. It's not a specimen, it's a predator, the ultimate predator. And we're keeping it in a cage like it's some kind of zoo animal. It's going to break free. It's going to kill everyone here. And then it's going to go back to the mountains and keep killing until someone stops it permanently." "We'll take that under advisement," Holloway said, though his tone suggested he was humoring Webb rather than listening. "For now, I need you to come with me. The debrief is mandatory, and after that you'll be given quarters. You need rest, Sergeant. You look like you haven't slept in days. Webb realized Holloway was right. He was exhausted, his body aching from bruises and strains, his mind fogged with fatigue and trauma. But he couldn't rest. Not while that thing was awake. Not while he could still feel its presence in his mind, watching, waiting. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. "I want to check on Chen's status, then I'll debrief." Holloway nodded, seeming relieved that Webb was cooperating. 5 minutes, I'll be outside." Webb waited for the major to leave, then approached the surgical nurse who was monitoring Chen's progress. "How is he?" "Stable," the nurse said, looking up from her monitors. "The surgery went well. We've repaired the lung damage and set the broken ribs. He's sedated now, resting comfortably. He'll need several weeks of recovery, but he'll live." Webb closed his eyes, feeling a surge of relief so intense it made him dizzy. Chen would live. One good thing in a night of horror. One small victory against the darkness. "Thank you," he said to the nurse, then turned and walked out to meet Holloway. The debriefing took 3 hours. Webb told them everything: the approach, the initial contact, the ambush in the ravine, the trap that had finally captured the creature. He described the deaths in detail, each one etched into his memory with the permanence of trauma. Rodriguez's skull crushed like an eggshell, Kowalski's body spinning through the air, Tanaka torn in half, Stevens' organs bursting through his back, the others whose names he couldn't remember, whose deaths had been equally brutal. He spoke until his voice was hoarse, until the scientists and officers listening had gone pale and silent, until there were no more questions to ask. "Thank you, Sergeant," the lead scientist, a Dr. Aris Thorne, said when Webb finally finished. Thorne was a tall man with silver hair and sharp features, dressed in a lab coat that bore the insignia of a government agency that didn't officially exist. "Your account has been illuminating." "You don't believe me," Webb said. "It wasn't a question." "I believe you experienced something traumatic," Thorne said carefully. "But I also believe that stress and adrenaline can distort perception. The creature you describe seems beyond biological possibility." "Then go look at it," Webb challenged. "Go stand in front of that cage and tell me I'm exaggerating. Tell me that thing is just an animal. Tell me that after it looks at you with those eyes and promises to eat your fear." Thorne's expression flickered, some of the confidence draining away. I'll examine the specimen, of course, once it's fully sedated." "It'll never be fully sedated," Webb said. "Not really. It'll pretend. It'll play along, but it's always awake, always aware. That's what it does. That's how it hunts." The debriefing ended after that, with Holloway escorting Webb to his quarters, a small but comfortable room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out over the mountains. It was designed to be restful, a place for soldiers to recover from missions. But Webb couldn't rest. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, seeing the deaths replay in his mind over and over. After an hour, he stood up. He couldn't stay here. He had to see the Wildman, had to look it in the eyes and prove to himself that it was contained, that it couldn't hurt anyone else. He left his room and made his way through the facility, following the signs to maximum security containment. The guards at the entrance tried to stop him, but Webb flashed his credentials and told them he had orders from Major Holloway to observe the specimen. It was a lie, but they didn't check, too busy with their own fear to question him. The containment cell was at the end of a long corridor, behind 3 separate security doors and a wall of reinforced glass that was supposedly bulletproof, blast-proof, and monster-proof. Webb stood before it and looked inside. The Wildman was secured to a massive steel table, limbs spread and locked in place with titanium restraints. Tubes ran from its arms, delivering a constant stream of sedatives directly into its bloodstream. The temperature in the cell was well below freezing. Webb could see frost on the creature's fur, see its breath misting in the cold air. It should have been unconscious. It should have been helpless. But its eyes were open, and they were looking at Webb. "Little soldier," the creature whispered, its voice carrying through the intercom system. "You came to visit. How touching." "I'm here to make sure you don't escape," Webb said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Escape?" the Wildman laughed, the sound distorted by the speakers but still terrible. "I do not need to escape, little soldier. I am already free. I told you. I am in your mind. I am in all your minds now. Every person in this facility who has seen me, who has thought about me, who fears me, I am there. I am waiting." "You're lying," Webb said, but he didn't believe it. "Am I?" The Wildman tilted its head, a grotesque parody of curiosity. "Then why are you here, little soldier? Why did you really come? Not to check on me. You know I am secure. You came because you feel it, the connection, the bond. You cannot stop thinking about me, can you? You see my face when you close your eyes. You hear my voice in your dreams. You taste your friend's blood when you try to eat." Webb said nothing. He couldn't deny it. "I am part of you now," the Wildman continued, its voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to bypass the speakers and speak directly into Webb's mind. "And you are part of me. When I break free, and I will break free, little soldier, make no mistake, I will find you first. I will save you for last, and I will make your death last for days." "You won't escape," Webb said, forcing conviction into his words. "This facility is secure. The restraints are unbreakable. The sedation is constant. You'll stay here until the scientists understand you, until they find a way to kill you." "Kill me?" The Wildman laughed again, louder this time. "Little soldier, I cannot be killed. I am eternal. I am the hunger in the dark, the teeth in the forest, the shadow that walks on two legs. I was old when your ancestors first crossed the ice bridges. I watched your kind build cities and burn them down. I will be here when your civilization is dust and your descendants are nothing but memories in the earth." "We'll see about that," Webb said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," the Wildman agreed, its crimson eyes gleaming with terrible knowledge. "We will see. Sleep well, little soldier. Dream of me." Webb turned and walked away, trying to ignore the sound of the creature's laughter following him down the corridor, echoing in his mind long after he had left the containment area. He returned to his quarters and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. The Wildman was right about one thing. Webb couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those crimson orbs staring back at him. Every time he tried to relax, he heard that voice whispering promises of death and terror. Somewhere in the facility, alarms blared. Webb sat up, reaching for his weapon, but before he could stand, his door burst open and Major Holloway rushed in, his face pale with fear. "It's escaped," Holloway said, the words falling from his lips like stones. "The Wildman, it broke free. It's loose in the facility." Webb felt a cold certainty settle over him. He had known this would happen, had known from the moment he looked into those crimson eyes. "How many dead?" he asked, already moving, already preparing for the fight that was coming. "We don't know," Holloway said. "The containment cell is empty. The scientists who were monitoring it, they're, Jesus, Sergeant, they're unrecognizable, whatever it did to them." "Where is it now?" Webb interrupted, not wanting to hear the details. He could imagine them well enough. "Somewhere in Sector 7, Holloway said. "The residential area. It's hunting, Sergeant, it's hunting all of us." Webb checked his weapon, making sure it was loaded with the special ammunition they had prepared for just this contingency. Hollow points filled with silver nitrate and wolfsbane extract, substances that legend claimed could harm creatures of darkness. He didn't know if they would work, but he was going to find out. "Lock down the facility," he ordered, taking command without question. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel, arm everyone who can fight, and get me to Sector 7. "You're in no condition to fight," Holloway protested. "You just came back from—" "I'm the only one who knows how to fight that thing," Webb snapped. "I captured it once. I'll kill it this time. Now move." They ran through the facility, alarms screaming around them, emergency lights painting everything in strobing red. Webb could hear the sounds of chaos ahead, screaming, gunfire, the wet crunch of flesh being torn. The Wildman was moving fast, killing efficiently, leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. They found the first victims in the corridor leading to Sector 7. 3 security guards torn limb from limb, their weapons unfired, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. The walls were painted with their blood, elaborate patterns that almost looked like writing, symbols that Webb recognized from the trees in the forest. "It's marking its territory," he said quietly, "claiming this place as its own." "What do we do?" Holloway asked, his voice shaking. "We stop it," Webb said simply. They advanced cautiously, weapons raised, following the trail of destruction. The Wildman had moved through the residential quarters, killing everyone it found. Webb saw families torn apart, children and spouses and parents reduced to meat and bone. The creature wasn't just killing for survival now. It was killing for pleasure, for sport, for the pure joy of slaughter. "This is my fault," Webb whispered, seeing the carnage. "I brought it here. I captured it. I thought we could control it." "You didn't know," Holloway said, though the words sounded hollow. "I knew," Webb said. "Deep down I knew, and I did it anyway, because I followed orders, because I told myself it was my job." A scream cut through the air, close and immediate, and Webb ran toward it, following the sound of agony to its source. He found the Wildman in the facility's mess hall, surrounded by bodies, feeding on a corpse that had once been a young woman, probably someone's daughter, maybe someone's mother. The creature looked up as Webb entered, blood dripping from its muzzle, those crimson eyes gleaming with recognition. "Little soldier," it rumbled, dropping its meal and rising to its full, terrible height. "You came to die." "I came to kill you," Webb said, raising his weapon. The Wildman laughed, a sound like thunder. "You cannot kill me, but you can try. I enjoy it when they try." It charged and Webb fired, emptying his magazine into the creature's chest. The special rounds hit home, the silver nitrate and wolfsbane doing what conventional ammunition could not. The Wildman screamed, a sound of genuine pain, and stumbled, clawing at its chest where smoke rose from the wounds. "It works," Webb breathed, feeling hope for the first time since the forest. He reloaded and fired again, and again, keeping the creature at bay, forcing it back toward the containment cell. Holloway and the other guards joined in, their weapons adding to the storm of death, and slowly, painfully, they drove the Wildman backward, step by step, until it was cornered in the containment area with nowhere to run. "You think you have won," the creature snarled, smoke rising from a dozen wounds. "You think this is victory. I am but one. There are others, older, stronger, hungrier, and they know your scent now, little soldier. They know your fear. They will come for you." "Let them come," Webb said, pulling the trigger one last time. The final round hit the Wildman between the eyes, the silver nitrate burning through bone and brain, and the creature that had terrorized the mountains for centuries, that had killed 23 people in one night, finally fell. It didn't die silently. It screamed, a sound that seemed to shake the foundations of the facility, seemed to echo through dimensions beyond human perception. And then it lay still, truly still, its crimson eyes glazing over, the malevolent light finally fading. Webb stood over it for a long time, waiting for it to move, to speak, to prove that it couldn't be killed. But it didn't. The Tennessee Wildman was dead. "Is it over?" Holloway asked, his voice barely audible. "It's over," Webb said, but even as he spoke he remembered the creature's final words. "There are others, older, stronger, hungrier." He looked down at the dead monster, at the face that had haunted his nightmares, and knew that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The Tennessee Wildman was dead. But the darkness it served was still out there, still waiting, still hungry. And someday, somehow, it would return. Webb holstered his weapon and walked away, leaving the body for the scientists to study, the blood for the cleaners to wash away, the memory for his nightmares to keep. He had survived, he had killed the monster, he had completed the mission. But he knew, with a certainty that would never leave him, that the war against the darkness was far from over. And next time, he might not be so lucky. The facility fell silent around him, the alarms finally stopping, the screaming finally fading. But in the silence, Webb could still hear it, that terrible voice, whispering promises of death and terror, echoing in the hollow spaces of his mind. The Wildman was dead, but it would never truly be gone. Not as long as Webb lived. Not as long as anyone remembered. The Black Hawk touched down at 600 hours, the rising sun painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson that seemed almost obscene after the horrors of the night. Webb supervised the unloading of the containment unit, his eyes never leaving the titanium bars, watching for any sign of movement from within. The Wildman remained still, its massive chest rising and falling in slow, rhythmic motions, but Webb knew with a certainty that bordered on the supernatural, that the creature was aware, watching, waiting. The transfer to the underground facility took 2 hours, every minute of which Webb spent in silent vigilance. The facility was everything he had expected and more. A labyrinth of corridors and chambers carved deep into bedrock, protected by blast doors and security checkpoints, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. Scientists in hazmat suits and military officers in crisp uniforms bustled about, all of them casting nervous glances at the containment unit as it passed. They knew what was inside, everyone knew. Dr. Aris Thorne met them at the entrance to the maximum security wing, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights, his expression carefully neutral. Thorne was a legend in certain circles, a man who had built his career on the study of the impossible, the categorization of the unexplainable. He had been waiting for this moment for decades. "Sergeant Webb," Thorne said, extending a hand that Webb didn't shake. "I'm told your team captured the creature alive. Remarkable, truly remarkable." "9 of my people died capturing it," Webb said flatly. "Don't make it sound like an achievement." "Of course, my condolences, but you must understand this specimen represents an unprecedented opportunity. The genetic material alone could revolutionize our understanding of—" "I don't care about the science," Webb interrupted. "I care about making sure that thing doesn't kill anyone else." Thorne's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, well, that's why we brought you here, to help us understand its capabilities, its weaknesses." "I already told your people everything I know." "What you know and what you understand are different things, Sergeant. Come, let me show you where it will be housed." The containment cell was impressive. A chamber 20 feet by 20 feet, walls reinforced with titanium alloy and concrete, the floor equipped with drainage channels for easy cleaning. The temperature was maintained at a constant 55 degrees, cool but not cold. There were cameras in every corner, sensors in the walls, monitoring equipment that could detect a mouse's heartbeat from 50 feet away. "State of the art," Thorne said proudly. "Nothing can escape from here." "That's what the engineers said about Pen 7, Webb muttered, referring to a previous containment breach he had read about in the classified files. Thorne's expression flickered. "That was an unfortunate incident. Lessons were learned, protocols were improved. This facility is different." "It had better be." The Wildman was transferred to the cell with maximum security protocols, robotic arms, remote-controlled gates, 10 armed guards with specialized ammunition. The creature didn't resist, didn't fight, simply allowed itself to be moved with that terrible patience that Webb had come to recognize. It was playing with them, he realized, letting them think they were in control. Once the cell was sealed, the magnetic locks engaged, the cameras activated, Webb finally allowed himself to relax slightly. The Wildman lay on the concrete floor, its eyes closed, apparently sleeping. But Webb knew better. "It can hear you," he told Thorne, who was studying the creature through the observation window with undisguised fascination. "It can understand you. Don't underestimate its intelligence." "Noted," Thorne made a note on his tablet. "Sergeant, if you would join me in the briefing room. There are others who wish to meet you." The briefing room was filled with people Webb didn't recognize and didn't trust. Scientists, bureaucrats, military officers with more stars than sense. They all wanted to hear his story, wanted to know how he had captured the creature, what he had learned about its behavior, its capabilities, its weaknesses. Webb told them everything. The approach, the ambush, the deaths, the trap that had finally worked. He didn't spare them the details, didn't soften the horror for delicate ears. They needed to understand what they were dealing with. "It tore through 8 trained soldiers in minutes," he concluded. "It took 50,000 volts and enough tranquilizers to kill a herd of elephants to bring it down. And even then it was still conscious, still aware. This isn't an animal, ladies and gentlemen. It's something else, something worse." "But it can be killed," one of the generals said, a man named Morrison who had never seen combat in his life. "You proved that with the special ammunition." "I heard it, I didn't kill it. There's a difference." "The silver nitrate and wolfsbane seem to have an effect," Thorne interjected. "We'll need to study that further, determine the exact mechanism." "While you're studying it, that thing is planning," Webb said. "It's smart, patient. It learns. Whatever you're going to do, do it fast, before it figures out how to escape." The meeting continued for hours, questions and answers, theories and speculation. Webb answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and all the while he felt the Wildman's presence like a weight on his chest. It was here in this facility, somewhere beneath tons of rock and steel, and it was waiting. When the meeting finally ended, Webb was assigned quarters and told to rest. He didn't. He couldn't. Instead, he made his way to the containment cell, drawn by a compulsion he couldn't explain, a need to see the creature, to understand it, perhaps to master his fear of it. The Wildman was awake when he arrived, standing in the center of the cell, its crimson eyes fixed on the observation window. It knew he was there. It had been waiting for him. "Little soldier," it rumbled, its voice carrying clearly through the intercom. "You came to check on your prisoner." "I came to make sure you haven't escaped." "Escape?" The Wildman laughed, that terrible grinding sound. "Why would I escape? I am exactly where I want to be." "What do you mean?" "You brought me here, little soldier, to this place of stone and steel, to this nest of your kind." The creature stepped closer to the glass, its breath fogging the surface. "Do you not understand? In the forest I was alone, one hunter among many, but here I am surrounded by prey, fat, soft prey that has never known the hunt, never known fear. The feast you have prepared for me is generous." Webb felt ice form in his stomach. "You're trapped, caged, you can't hurt anyone." "Trapped?" The Wildman pressed one massive hand against the glass, and Webb watched in horror as the surface frosted over, ice crystals spreading from the creature's touch. "Cages are for animals, little soldier. I am not an animal. I am the darkness between the trees. I am the scream in the night. I am the teeth that close around the throat, and I am already free." "You're delusional. The cell is secure. The locks are." "The locks are nothing. The cell is nothing." The Wildman tilted its head, that almost human gesture. "I told you in the helicopter, little soldier. I am in your mind, in all your minds. Every person in this facility who fears me, who dreams of me, who whispers my name in the dark. I am there, waiting." "You're lying." "Am I? Then tell me, little soldier, what am I doing right now?" Webb stared through the glass, watching the creature. It was just standing there, motionless, staring back at him. "Nothing," he said. "You're doing nothing." "Wrong," the Wildman smiled, showing those terrible teeth. "I am reaching out, touching, tasting, and right now I am standing behind you." Webb spun around, his heart hammering, his weapon raised. The corridor behind him was empty, just concrete walls and fluorescent lights. "There is no one there," the Wildman said, and its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, not just from the speakers. "Not yet, but there will be, when the time is right, when the feast begins." "You're trying to scare me." "I am succeeding." The Wildman stepped back from the glass, its smile widening. "Sleep well, little soldier, dream of me." It closed its eyes and went still, apparently returning to sleep. But Webb knew it was awake, always watching. He left the containment area, his hands shaking, his mind racing. The creature was playing psychological games, trying to rattle him to assert dominance. That was all. It couldn't actually reach through the glass, couldn't affect his mind, couldn't do anything but talk. But as he walked back to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. Something just out of sight, just beyond the edge of perception, watching with crimson eyes and waiting for the darkness. The first death came 3 days later. Private First Class Samuel Jackson was found in the maintenance tunnels beneath Sector 4, his body torn apart in ways that defied explanation. His chest had been opened from the inside, his ribs cracked like eggshells, his heart removed and eaten. The cameras in the area had malfunctioned simultaneously, leaving no record of what had occurred. The Wildman was still in its cell, the locks engaged, the sensors showing no movement. But Webb knew. He knew as soon as he heard, as soon as he saw the body. "It's not possible," Dr. Thorne insisted, his face pale as he stared at the crime scene photos. "The creature hasn't left its cell. We've checked the footage, the locks, everything." "It didn't need to leave," Webb said quietly. "It didn't need to physically be there." "What are you talking about?" "It can project itself, manifest somehow, reach beyond its physical form." Webb met Thorne's eyes. "You wanted to know what it can do. This is what it can do. Kill without leaving its cage, hunt through walls and distance." "That's impossible." "It's happening." The second death came the next night. Corporal Diana Chen, no relation to the lieutenant who had died in the forest, was found in her quarters, her body suspended from the ceiling by her own intestines, arranged in a pattern that matched symbols carved into the trees where the Wildman had been captured. Again, the Wildman's cell showed no activity. Again, the cameras had failed. The facility went into lockdown. Everyone was confined to quarters except essential personnel. Armed guards patrolled every corridor, every junction, every shadow. But it didn't help. The third death came anyway. Dr. Robert Hastings, one of the senior scientists studying the Wildman's DNA, was found in his laboratory, his body reduced to component parts, arranged on his workbench in an anatomical display that would have been educational if it hadn't been so horrifying. His notes were covered in symbols, crude drawings of the Wildman's face, messages written in blood that translated to more and hunger and fear me. "It's feeding," Webb told the emergency council that convened in the aftermath. "Not on their bodies, on their fear, on their terror. That's what sustains it." "How do we stop it?" General Morrison demanded, his confidence finally shattered. "How do we kill something that can reach through walls?" "You can't," Webb said. "Not while it's conscious. Not while it can think. You need to shut it down completely. Total shutdown, deep sedation, cryogenic freezing. Something that stops not just its body but its presence." "That would kill our research," Thorne objected. "We need it conscious, active. We need to study its mind, its abilities." "Then more people will die. The Wildman is using this facility as a hunting ground. It doesn't need to escape because it can reach out from its cage. It can touch minds, manipulate perceptions, manifest in the shadows. It's not a physical threat anymore. It's a psychic one." The council argued for hours, scientists clashing with soldiers, research interests conflicting with survival instincts. In the end, they decided to increase security, add more sensors, post more guards. They refused to sacrifice their prize. That night, 5 more people died. The massacre in Sector 7 was the worst. 12 security personnel all killed simultaneously, their bodies found in a circle, their hearts removed, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. The walls were covered in blood, symbols, messages. "I am free. The hunt begins. Fear me." The Wildman was still in its cell, still motionless, still apparently sleeping. But the death toll was rising, and Webb knew it wouldn't stop until everyone in the facility was dead. "We have to kill it," he told the council the next morning. "Not sedate, not study, kill, destroy the body, burn it, scatter the ashes. It's the only way to stop the killing. The research value is worthless if everyone is dead." Webb slammed his hand on the table. "It has already killed 20 people, 20, and it's not even trying hard. Imagine what happens when it decides to get serious, when it stops playing and starts hunting in earnest." "And if you're wrong," Thorne asked quietly, "if we kill it and the deaths continue, what then?" "Then we were wrong, but at least we tried." They voted, 3 in favor of termination, 5 against, 4 abstaining. The Wildman would live. That night Webb made his decision. He would kill the creature himself, regardless of orders, regardless of consequences. He couldn't let it continue, couldn't stand by while more people died. He prepared carefully. Specialized ammunition, silver and wolfsbane, and other substances from folklore that might harm supernatural entities. Explosives capable of reducing a body to ash. Protective gear designed to shield against psychic attack, if such a thing were possible. At midnight, he made his move. The containment cell was quiet when he arrived, the Wildman lying motionless on the floor. Webb approached the glass, weapon ready, and activated the intercom. "Wake up, you son of a bitch." The Wildman's eyes opened. It smiled. "Little soldier, you came to kill me. I'm going to end this. You think you can. With your guns and your bombs, you think the physical can harm what I am. I think I'm going to try." Webb raised his weapon and fired, emptying the magazine into the creature's chest. The special rounds hit home, the silver nitrate burning, the wolfsbane poisoning. The Wildman convulsed, screaming, thrashing against the floor. "No," it roared. "You cannot. I am eternal. I am." Webb detonated the explosives. The blast was contained within the cell, designed to incinerate everything inside while leaving the facility intact. The Wildman's body was consumed in the fire, reduced to ash and bone fragments. When the smoke cleared, when the emergency teams rushed in, they found Webb standing before the shattered glass, his weapon empty, his body covered in soot and blood that wasn't his own. And on the floor of the cell, in the center of the destruction, they found a message written in ash. "Next time." The death stopped after that. No more bodies, no more terror. The facility returned to normal operations, the research continued with other specimens, and the Wildman became a footnote in classified files, a cautionary tale of what happens when you try to cage the uncageable. Webb was arrested, of course, court-martialed, discharged in disgrace. He didn't care. He had done what was necessary. He had killed the monster. But sometimes in his dreams, he still saw those crimson eyes, still heard that voice whispering in his mind. "Next time, little soldier, next time." He moved to the mountains after his release, building a cabin deep in the woods, far from anyone else. He waited for the Wildman to return, prepared to fight again, to die if necessary. But the creature never came. Perhaps it was truly dead. Perhaps the explosion had destroyed not just its body but its essence, its presence, its power. Or perhaps it was simply waiting, patient, eternal, watching from the shadows with crimson eyes, until the time was right. Until the hunt began again. Webb sat on his porch every night, his weapon in his lap, watching the tree line. Waiting. 5 years after the facility incident, Marcus Webb lived alone in his mountain cabin, hunting his own food, cutting his own firewood, keeping his distance from civilization. The military had discharged him with a medical diagnosis of PTSD and paranoid schizophrenia. The doctors said his claims about the Wildman's psychic abilities were delusions, products of trauma. They said the deaths at the facility had been caused by a rogue element, a human killer, not a supernatural entity. They said a lot of things. Webb didn't believe any of it. He had seen what he had seen. He knew what was real. The Wildman was still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting. He had proof, or what passed for proof in his isolated existence. The dreams, for one. Every night the same nightmare, the creature's crimson eyes staring into his soul, that terrible voice whispering promises of death and reunion. The signs in the forest, trees marked with symbols that matched the ones from the Appalachian capture site, animal kills arranged in deliberate patterns, the absence of birdsong in certain areas that suggested something was keeping even the wildlife away. And the visitors, the ones who came asking questions about what he had seen, what he knew, offering money for his silence or threats for his cooperation. Government agents, private contractors, men in suits with no names. They were still watching him, still afraid of what he might say, what he might reveal. He told them nothing, had nothing left to tell. The evening it happened, Webb was chopping firewood when he felt it. A sudden drop in temperature, a silence that pressed against his eardrums, the presence of something ancient and malevolent in the trees beyond his clearing. He knew immediately. The Wildman had come. He didn't run, didn't hide. He picked up his shotgun, the one loaded with custom rounds, silver, wolfsbane, iron, everything he could think of that might hurt a creature of darkness, and waited. The creature emerged from the forest like smoke, its massive form gliding between the trees without a sound. It looked exactly as Webb remembered. 8 feet tall, covered in matted brown fur, its face a nightmare of jutting jaw and yellowed teeth, its eyes glowing crimson in the fading light. "Little soldier," it rumbled, its voice unchanged, carrying across the clearing like thunder. "You have been waiting." "I knew you'd come," Webb said, raising the shotgun. "Killed you once, can do it again." "Killed me?" The Wildman laughed, that terrible grinding sound. "You destroyed a vessel, a container. The body I wore in your facility was but clothes. I have many bodies, many forms. Then I'll destroy them all." Brave words, but empty. You cannot destroy what I am, little soldier. I am the darkness in the forest. I am the scream in the night. I am eternal. Then why are you here? If you can't be killed, why bother with me? The Wildman moved closer, stepping into the clearing, and Webb saw the details he had missed before. The scars on its chest where the silver had burned, the patches of missing fur where the fire had scarred. It had been hurt. Maybe not destroyed, but damaged, weakened. "I am here," the creature said, "because you interest me. You killed my vessel. You resist my presence. You do not break, do not surrender, you fight." "Damn right I do." Why fight what you cannot defeat? Why suffer when surrender would bring peace?" "Because surrender means death, and I'm not ready to die." "Everyone dies, little soldier. You, your friends, everyone you have ever loved. Death comes for all." "Maybe, but I'll make it work for its meal." The Wildman tilted its head, studying him. "You are different from the others. Most humans beg, plead, offer anything for their lives, but you defy. Even when hopeless, you defy." "It's all I've got left." "Then let me offer you something else." The creature stepped closer, close enough that Webb could smell its breath, hot and coppery and smelling of meat. "Serve me. Be my voice in the world of men. Tell my story, spread my legend, make them fear the forest again, and in return I will let you live. Forever." "Forever?" "I can make you like me, strong, eternal, immune to death. You would be my prophet, little soldier, my herald, and you would never know the weakness of flesh again." Webb considered the offer. Not seriously. He would never serve this thing, never become what he had fought, but he considered how to use it, how to buy time, how to find a weakness. "And if I refuse?" "Then you die here tonight, and your death will be slow, painful, full of suffering." "Already been there, the facility, remember." "That was mercy. I was playing with you then, giving you hope. This time there will be no hope, only pain, only fear, only the slow dissolution of everything you are." You talk too much. Webb fired. The slug hit the Wildman in the chest, dead center, and the creature staggered, roaring, clutching at the wound. Webb fired again and again, emptying the shotgun into the creature's torso, watching it stumble, watching it fall. But it didn't stay down. It rose, shaking off the damage like water, and charged. Webb threw himself aside, feeling the wind of the creature's passage, rolling to his feet and drawing his sidearm, also loaded with special rounds. He fired as he retreated, hitting the Wildman in the face, the neck, the chest. The creature slowed, blood pouring from its wounds, but it didn't stop, didn't die. "You cannot kill me," it roared. "I told you I am eternal." "Maybe," Webb panted, backing toward his cabin, toward the traps he had prepared, the explosives, the final gambit. "But you can be hurt, and that means you can be stopped." He reached the cabin door and kicked it open, stepping inside, luring the creature after him. The Wildman followed, its massive form filling the doorway, blocking the light. "A trap," it sneered. "Do you think I fear your pathetic?" Webb hit the detonator. The cabin exploded. He had prepared it for years, filling the walls with explosives, the floor with gasoline, the ceiling with nails and shrapnel. The blast was devastating, reducing the cabin to rubble, sending fire and debris in all directions. Webb had positioned himself by the window, protected by a reinforced shield, and the explosion threw him clear, sending him tumbling across the clearing, his ears ringing, his body bruised and bleeding. He rolled to his feet, weapon ready, searching the smoke and flame for the Wildman. The creature crawled from the wreckage, its body burned and broken, one arm hanging useless, its fur on fire. It was hurt, seriously hurt. "Little soldier," it gasped, smoke rising from its wounds. "What have you done?" "Given you a choice," Webb said, advancing slowly, his weapon trained on the creature. "Surrender, go back to whatever hell you came from, and leave humanity alone." "Surrender," the Wildman laughed, the sound weak and wet. "To you, never." "Then die." Webb fired his last rounds, aiming for the creature's head, its heart, the wounds his research suggested might be vital. The Wildman convulsed, blood pouring from its mouth, its crimson eyes dimming. "This is not the end," it whispered. "I will return, I always return. Not if I have anything to say about it." Webb approached the dying creature, standing over it, watching the life fade from its eyes. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just weariness. The endless war against darkness, and he was so tired. "Why?" the Wildman asked, its voice barely audible. "Why do you fight?" "Because someone has to." "Foolish little soldier, the darkness always wins." "Maybe, but not today." The Wildman's eyes closed. Its chest stopped rising. And Marcus Webb, veteran of a dozen battles against the impossible, stood alone in the ruins of his home, surrounded by fire and smoke, and wondered if it was finally over. He knew it wasn't. The Wildman had said it would return, and Webb believed it. But he had bought time, for himself, for others, for the world. It would have to be enough. He walked away from the burning cabin, into the forest, into the night. He didn't know where he was going, didn't care, just away. The Wildman was dead, for now. But the war continued. And Marcus Webb would keep fighting. Until the end. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, so you don't miss the stories yet to come.